Morning.
3 counties, 24 cities, working together, accomplishing more than any of us could alone. Whether your roots run generations deep, or you recently moved to Greater Portland, you are a part of Metro, the nation's only regional government elected by the people. Planning for the future, preserving what we love. Let's keep our region thriving for decades to come.
Hello, I'm Rory. You may have seen me at my desk as you came into the Metro Regional Center. Welcome. The Council Chambers is located on the 3rd floor of this building. In the event of a fire or a fire alarm, please exit through the northeast corner of the room. Go down the steps to the 2nd floor, then continue straight ahead past my desk and exit through the main entrance to the plaza outside. The nearest defibrillator is located right outside of the front desk at the top of the steps to Grand Avenue. Thanks for joining us at the Metro Regional Center. We hope you have a safe day.
Wonderful. All right. It's declared quorum, and I'm going to call our Metro Council business meeting to order. I will now ask our clerk, Georgia Linger, to call roll for attendance and also to introduce our new intern after, if you could.
Oh, yes, happy to. Councilor Rosenthal?
I'm here.
Councilor Nolan?
Hello there. I'm here.
Councilor Palacios?
Here.
Councilor Simpson?
President, good morning.
Good morning. Councilor Wong and Councilor Lewis should be joining us shortly, and Council President Gonzalez.
Present. Thank you. Georgia, can you also introduce our new council intern to the council?
Yes, absolutely. So we have a new council intern with us. This is Lennox's second day. Lennox is a recent graduate and has a passion for digital marketing, which should be really helpful for all of our social media things that we've been doing in the office and being able to expand that. Yeah, we're super, super excited to have Lennox.
Welcome, Lennox.
Welcome, Lennox. Welcome.
Great. And I also want to introduce another wonderful set of interns joining us from the Zoo Apprenticeship Program. We lovely call them our ZAP interns. Hello, ZAP interns. Good to see y'all. ZAP interns support community education at the Oregon Zoo through free conservation programming and tours. And today the ZAP interns are shadowing our own council office interns to learn more about local government. So welcome to our council meeting today. And council, I do want to transition us to a bit more of a somber note, if you'll allow me. I would like to acknowledge that we had 2 recent tragedies on waterways connected to Metro properties where 2 people lost their lives. I know that our hearts are with their families, their loved ones, and everyone affected by these devastating losses. I just want to invite us to observe a brief moment of silence in their memory, if you'll please join me. Thank you. While we proceed with today's business, I want these losses to remain on our minds, and Metro staff will continue their mission of outreach and education around water and outdoor safety, which is really critical with the heat. I know that a lot of people are struggling with the temperature and are wanting to go outside and enjoy the water and be cool, and we want them to do that, and we want them to do that safely. Okay, Georgia, if we could now please open public communications on agenda items.
Yes. If you are testifying on non-agenda items, now is the time to do so. If you're testifying in person, please sign up by filling out a blue card in the back of the room and bringing it up to me. If you're testifying on Zoom or by phone, please sign up by using the raise hand function in the reactions or more menus or by dialing *9. When it is your turn to testify, I'll call on your name or phone number. For those on Zoom, click accept to be promoted to a panelist. You can turn on your camera if you'd like. Testimony is limited to 3 minutes and the timer begins when you begin speaking. Please state your name for the record before testifying. You do not need to give your physical address. If you are testifying on an agenda item and have not signed up in advance, please fill out a blue card in the back of the room and bring it up to me now or anytime before the agenda item, or you can raise your virtual hand at the beginning of the agenda item that you wish to testify on. And Council President Gonzalez, I'm not seeing anyone who has signed up to testify in advance today, and I'm not seeing anyone coming up in the virtual or physical audience.
All right, thank you, Georgia. Council, I will close testimony on public communication and move to our consent agenda. We do have 3 items on today's consent agenda. Consideration of the June 18th council meeting minutes, consideration of the June 23rd council meeting minutes, and consideration of the June 25th council meeting minutes. Council, can I call for a motion on our consent agenda?
So moved. Second. Jinx.
All right, I'll give the first to Councilor Simpson and the second to Councilor Lewis. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. All right, our council consent agenda is unanimous and also feels like someone's gonna have a Coca-Cola, so that's great. Next, we'll have our first resolution number 26-5612, for the purpose of approving targeted universalism as Metro's framework to achieve equitable outcomes. Over a decade ago, Metro demonstrated real leadership in the development and implementation of its strategic plan to advance racial equity. We've learned through this process that if we want to meaningfully move the needle, we need to be more specific about the outcomes we want to achieve in our metrics for measuring progress. Last year, Metro Council and staff both engaged in a very thorough and an extensive process to build a shared understanding of targeted universalism, the approach recommended by our DEI experts and for Metro. Since then, staff have developed the framework before us today for consideration. I am very pleased to turn it over to our Chief Operating Officer, Marisa Madrigal, and our Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Sabrina Owens-Wilson, to guide us through the framework. Thank you both.
Thank you so much, President Gonzalez. It's our pleasure to be here today. It's the culmination of a lot of work by a lot of folks across the agency. And I believe we have a slide presentation that should be popping up any moment. So this resolution advances Metro Council priorities by strengthening the organization's ability to embed racial equity in decision-making through a consistent, accountable, and legally sound framework. Fundamentally, this resolution is about making government better at serving the public. It is in alignment with our values and provides an approach that can be adapted to different lines of service and areas of work. I encourage you to think of this as a racial equity strategy that enables us to stand firmly in our responsibility to serve everyone as a government. If we do this right, we will achieve greater impact across the region. I will now hand it to our fabulous Director Owens-Wilson for the presentation. Sabrina.
Thank you. Good morning, Metro Council President and Metro Councilors. I'm Sabrina Owens-Wilson. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm Metro's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Director. Next slide, please. As Council considers this resolution in service of strengthening our approach to racial equity, I want to start with the foundation we're building from. While we often point to the 2016 strategic plan as the beginning of Metro's racial equity strategy, today's resolution actually builds on more than 2 decades of council leadership and investment. Each milestone represents an evolution in our thinking and deepening of the agency's commitment to advancing equity. The timeline highlights council's actions, but does not capture the full scope of the work happening across the organization. It shows how council's leadership has shaped and strengthened Metro's approach over time. Next slide. So back to the strategic plan to advance racial equity, diversity, and inclusion, which we also refer to as SPREDI. Adopted in 2016, this plan gave Metro clear direction to embed racial equity in how we operate and serve the community. The plan identified concrete actions that we've monitored for progress It also served as the foundation for department plans and has spurred creativity and innovation across the agency. Next slide, please. The strategic plan also provided guidance on methods for implementation through a set of approaches that included values, tactics, and targeted universalism framework. Over the years, Metro has tested a number of approaches to bring this work to life. We've explored and adapted various tools, frameworks, and best practices, and developed our own tools, including the racial equity framework. In preparation for the next iteration of the plan, we produced the impact report, which captured both progress and lessons learned. We found that while we have a menu of methods, the lack of a unified approach creates challenges in operationalizing racial equity strategies. Building on previous efforts, we wanted to explore whether targeted universalism could provide the consistency and clarity we were missing. Because it is a tested equity framework, we have some level of agency familiarity with it, and it creates opportunities to align with other agencies in the region. Next slide. As you recall, targeted universalism is an equity framework that helps organizations achieve shared outcomes while recognizing that different groups may face different barriers. The framework starts with co-creating a universal goal. It then uses data to understand how different communities are situated relative to that goal, examines the systems and structures shaping those outcomes, and develops targeted strategies so everyone can move toward the same result. What appealed to us is that this framework is both practical and measurable while centering community voice and impact. It provides a clear process for decision-making, implementation, communication, and evaluation. Even though TU has been around the agency for a while, we found that there was a range of understanding among staff, and we had an opportunity to build a shared foundation before we move forward. Next slide. So we launched the Targeted Universalism Alignment Learning and Alignment Project last July with two goals: build a shared understanding of targeted universalism and determine whether it could strengthen Metro's racial equity strategy. We brought in Seed Collaborative to support this work, and together we designed a co-creative process intended to produce a recommendation for council consideration. I want to express my gratitude to Evan, Paul, Ratna, and Rio at Seed Collaborative. It was a privilege to work with a consulting team that are not only excellent subject matter experts, educators, and facilitators, they were also strategic partners that were invested in the success of the project and Metro as a whole. The year-long process started with a racial equity assessment that built on the impact report to understand definitions and approaches to racial equity at Metro, successes and challenges, understanding of targeted universalism, and visions for the future of the work. Through focus groups, interviews, and document review, the findings highlighted a need for greater role clarity and accountability, inconsistent practices and expectations, and a desire for a clearer vision and shared approach. And while targeted universalism offers structures to address this challenge, we had to bridge the different understandings in the agency about the framework. Our goal was to level set understanding so we could meaningfully consider the framework. The assessment provided a roadmap for designing 2-day retreats for each group, and then a final retreat that brought all of the groups together to see if we could align on a recommendation to council. Next slide. I'm going to spend a bit of time on this slide that has 3 words on it, so bear with me. This resolution is backed by a process that was designed around the same principles that underpin targeted universalism. Starting with inclusion, this could have been a simple top-down decision. Instead, we endeavored on a more complex and robust process that captured the opportunity to learn from the collective capacity and expertise we've built over the years. We engaged a set of stakeholders that brought together decision makers that set policy direction, implementers and practitioners, and partners we rely on to guide the work. This included the Racial Equity Leadership Team, which includes formal and informal designated representatives from each department, our Employee Resource Group co-chairs, and DEI department staff. These are the practitioners of our equity strategies who understand how this work is implemented across the agency and are connected to the workforce and how they experience the work. We included the Committee on Racial Equity, which consists of community leaders that advise council on Metro's equity strategies. Their participation brought important community perspectives to the process and ensured that it was informed by the most impacted. This allowed the committee to move beyond reviewing the final product to serving as active partners in developing and shaping the process and outcome. The senior leadership team was critical as it includes directors from each of the departments who, under the leadership of the Office of the COO, are responsible for operationalizing policy direction from council, and of course, Metro Council. Though council is the ultimate decision makers, this was a unique opportunity to learn and be in thought partnership together. Next, co-creation guided the project, which is a collaborative process that invites participants to ideate, design, and develop strategies together. Starting with the assessment, this process was grounded in the perspectives and insights of the participants, and each step was guided by a project advisory team. And finally, shared leadership. This is only possible when those who hold the power are willing to share it, and folks that are stepping into the space share the responsibility of the outcome. I want to commend council for your openness and commitment to this unique process. This was also a consensus-driven process. Participants were not merely present, they were active decision makers. They were asked to bring their perspectives forward, engage with the perspectives of others, and work through differences to arrive at shared recommendations. That kind of collaboration isn't easy, but it was what made this process so impactful and ultimately successful. Also on this slide, I want to take a minute to express some gratitude. I gave a presentation to a PSU graduate class a couple months ago about this project, and one of the students asked what I would have done if I didn't have the organizational support that I had in this project. I can tell you it wouldn't have looked like this. I want to start by thanking our COO, Marisa Madrigal, and your team for your unwavering support for this project. I think I asked you like 3 or 4 times if we could really do 2-day retreats. I was like, can we do it? And you were like, yes. And I was like, but can we do it? And you're like, I already said yes. And then I told everyone we were gonna do 2-day retreats, and they were like, 2 whole days? And I was like, yes. We recognize that this was a significant ask. Yet each of you showed up with trust, openness, and a willingness to engage. This process was an opportunity to put our values of equity and inclusion into practice, and you stepped into that challenge with authenticity and commitment. Because of your contributions, we were able to learn from one another, build stronger understanding, and create something meaningful together. Also, none of this would have happened without my project team. Deputy Director Cassie Salinas, and Program and Policies Manager Christina Marie Ritter. I could not have imagined better partners to ride this roller coaster with. Thank you. So the outcome. The proposal that we brought to the final retreat and shaped the recommendation behind this resolution today was Metro advancing racial equity through a targeted universalism framework. Using the FISTA 5 consensus model, meaning that votes 3, 4, or 5 were considered in consensus, we achieved majority support for this proposal on the belief that the framework would provide Metro with shared language, a rigorous methodology, opportunity for regional leadership, and a consistent framework for decision-making. While this may seem like a simple conclusion, it's the result of months of learning, thoughtful discussion, difficult conversations, collaboration, and compromise. The consensus that emerged around racial equity was shaped through an iterative process of learning from one another. The value lies not only in the final decision, but in the human-centered process that brought us there. We left this process with stronger relationships and greater alignment, both of which will be essential for implementation. I also wanted to note that there were lingering concerns that prevented reaching complete consensus. Participants identified several implementation considerations that we will carry forward into implementation, starting with building strong data practices to ensure we are not leaving communities behind when there's insufficient data, creating structures and resources that support consistent application, and establishing clear expectations and accountability. Next slide. This resolution strengthens Metro's approach in 4 ways. First, it shifts us toward an outcomes-driven model that challenges us to have a vision for where we want to be and measure our success accordingly. Further, it brings a focus to changing systems rather than supporting folks in navigating broken systems. Second, it provides a consistent methodology that can be applied across the agency. It establishes shared expectations so staff know what's expected of them, community knows how they'll be engaged, and decision makers are equipped with the information they need to make equity-based decisions. And finally, it offers a communications framework that emphasizes shared outcomes and helps counter zero-sum narratives. Because of the advisory role of the Committee on Racial Equity serves, I want to share 2 quotes from committee members with you today. One from committee member Abe Vega. As someone who does not typically engage deeply with equity frameworks, I was impressed by targeted universalism. After participating in Metro's TU retreat, I came to appreciate the value of using tailored strategies to help different groups achieve shared goals. The experience gave me the opportunity to learn more, express doubts, and explore my thoughts around the strategic plan. I hope Metro continues to apply this approach in future work, and I appreciate the opportunity to share my feedback. And second, from committee member Cynthia Lamb-Moffitt, I want to share my appreciation for Metro's effort to teach and implement targeted universalism. As a core member, I've been impressed by the connections and community building that have emerged through the TU learning sessions in collaboration with Metro staff. These experiences have strengthened my understanding of TU and its potential to support Metro's strategic plan goals. I look forward to seeing how Metro operationalizes these ideas and how CORE can contribute. Thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts. Next slide, please. The resolution before you today does 2 things. First, it formally approves targeted universalism as Metro's framework for advancing racial equity and achieving equitable outcomes. Second, it directs the COO to develop the organizational structures, guidance, and implementation approach needed to put the framework into practice. Next slide. Approval of this resolution does not end the work, it is the beginning. Our immediate focus will be on testing and refining application of the framework, identifying the structure and resources needed for successful implementation, integrating the framework into Metro's next racial equity strategy, and ensuring ongoing legal compliance in partnership with the Office of Metro Attorney. This phased approach allows us to learn, adapt, and build organizational capacity before broader implementation. After 2 decades of council commitment, years of implementation experience, and a year-long collaborative process, staff recommends approval of targeted universalism as the framework to help Metro achieve equitable outcomes for everyone in the region. Thank you. I'll pass it back to you, President Gonzalez.
Excellent. Thank you. Melissa, is there anything that you would like to add? No? All right. Wonderful. Sabrina, thank you. As you were talking about the full-day retreats, it took me back to some of the exercises that we had and were able to go around, and I was able to interact with so many people from different parts of Metro and the agency, and just having conversation about strategy and values. It was wonderful. It just made me feel so connected to this place and what's possible about what the work that we do at Metro. And thank you to you and your awesome team for that. Council, do we have any comments or questions, feedback for Director Owens Wilson? Take any hands here. Councilor Simpson, and then we'll go to Councilor Lewis.
Thank you so much, President Gonzalez. Thank you, Sabrina. Thank you, DEI staff and department. Today marks a very important milestone in Metro's ongoing commitment to advancing equitable outcomes across our region. You put in a lot of work, ma'am. A whole lot of work, a lot of sleepless nights. So I just personally just want to say thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Targeted universalism is about creating a region where everyone can reach the same destination while acknowledging that not everyone starts from the same place. And I think this work is going to help define a lot of where we're going to go with policy, because we're going to be able to have that data. And I do have one question.
Yeah.
If you're ready for it.
I'm ready.
You sure? All right. District 1 includes communities with very different needs, from urbanized East County areas to suburban and rural communities in Clackamas County. How does targeted universalism help us account for those geographic differences while pursuing shared regional outcomes?
Thank you for the question. Well, the words of support as well as the question, Councilor Simpson. I think that while targeted universalism offers a structured framework, it also is adaptable and flexible in how we utilize it. And we have the opportunity, when we talk about the step in the framework where we use data to understand how different communities are situated, we can make decisions about how we parse data and what kind of sectors of the population that we look at. And so I think it will be important as we consider, as we move through implementation, is that we have some conversations about the different ways that we can look at where community is situated. Race, income, a whole slew of social and economic indicators, as well as geography. And so we have the ability to set some practices and standards around, how we look at the data and use it and make strategies from there.
And that also lets us go down a little deeper, like even down in, like to your point, census tract, like educational attainment and things like that, so that we know who gaps.
Absolutely.
This work is fantastic. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor. Councilor Lewis, and then Councilor Rosenthal.
Sure, thank you. I want to celebrate today. We are here with a formal vote, but I see that as just codifying what we have done through a collaborative and co-creative process. And that is that council was there, but so were staff and senior leadership. So was core and community, and so were our frontline staff who are doing the work of equity and program every single day. But it is only because those kind of four groups came together and made this decision that we're taking this action. So I want to recognize that this action is the action of 7 individuals on behalf of so many more, hundreds more, who have been part of making this, and to each and every one of those who put in the time to go to the retreats, to do the real learning and unlearning that this framework has required. I celebrate that. I'm remembering when it was early 2022 and Metro brought John Powell to Portland. And it was a remarkable experience to come together as a whole community. We had folks from all 3 counties. And remember the early days of 2022, we had delivered vaccines, but we weren't quite back to normal. So it was a really special time to be together. And the analogy that was used to help plant the seeds for what has become our target universalism strategy was around being in a room with people and deciding not only how to have furniture, but what furniture, where the furniture, and how to use the furniture. And that feels simplistic, but also at the same time, when we're building a region and all of our tools are in infrastructure and services, that reach communities. That feels very right when we are planning how our systems are going to be developed. We are making the furniture of the 3-county region. So I think back to those remarks and the energy that came out of that room and the way that Metro historically would have addressed the problem is to obsess over the problem. Define, redefine, double down on a white paper that is presenting the problem. But what Targeted Universalism has offered us is the ability to get away from defining the problem and instead to agree to the outcomes that everybody can achieve. And instead of dwelling on the problem, say, where do we have a lever to reach that outcome? How does solid waste, how does housing, how does parks, how does economic development level us up towards what we want to be? And I love that mindset, both for its optimism, but also looking at us as a resource that we're building furniture, not just rearranging it. So I look forward to seeing what each and every program does with their analysis through TU. I look forward to resourcing time and space to learn and to dig deeper, because this is just the tip of the iceberg. We're developing teams that are actually going to be able to flex those muscles, and that's going to take practice. It's going to take training with the small weights before we move to the big ones, and I'm along for that journey. So thank you to everybody who brought us here today, and let's keep going.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Councilor Lewis. Councilor Rosenthal, and then Councilor Palacios.
Thank you, Chair Gonzalez. Thank you, Sabrina, for all the hard work. This is important stuff. It's important that we remember that we have not achieved equity, and we have a lot more work to do. This today is important. Adopting this is important, but this is not the end. This is the beginning. We have 26 members. We have a whole bunch of associates. Our goal and our task as a regional convener is to make sure they understand this and make sure that they have the opportunities to continue to move forward with equity. Whether they specifically adopt TU or not is something that they may have to make that decision, but the principles are something that we need to help them with, and we need to keep moving forward on this regionally. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Palacios?
Thank you so much. Yeah, Sabrina, I mean, I had the opportunity to chat with you for, the first proper time earlier this week, I believe. Yeah, I get my days all mixed up. But just a sincere thank you for partnering with everyone else in this work. This is incredibly important now more than ever, especially with the weight of some of the stuff that is happening federally in how government agencies operate within this space. And so the intentionality of this targeted universalism approach, it's big. And super thankful and super excited to see where this leads Metro as a whole. Thank you.
Wonderful. All right, anyone else from the council? Sabrina, I just to add and build off of what my colleagues and peers have said, I think I just want to express how proud I am of our region to continue to stand by our values in the face of extraordinary external threats, almost demanding us to do things in a way that does not align with what we want to see for Oregonians and for people that call this place home. I feel like a champion. I feel like this council is ready to do the work necessary to support staff's development, implementation, and then ultimately the delivery of this work at every single level possible. And I want to send a really cloud and clear message about Metro in that sense. And with that, I will call on the Metro Council to please give a motion on resolution number 26-5612 for the purpose of approving targeted universalism as Metro's framework to achieve equitable outcomes.
So moved.
I will second that motion.
All right, moved by Councilor Simpson and seconded by Councilor Palacios. Any additional discussion, Council? Okay, seeing none, Georgia, if you could please call roll.
Counselor Nolan.
Yes.
Counselor Palacios.
Aye.
Counselor Lewis.
Aye.
Counselor Simpson.
Aye.
Counselor Rosenthal,
Aye.
Council President Gonzalez.
Aye, thank you. The motion passes unanimously, and Metro has adopted targeted universalism. I'm not. Monumental, absolutely monumental. If I could just tell a story real quick, I think maybe folks have shared it, but the 2016 Sporetti Strategic Plan to Advance Racial Equity played such an important part in my life, even before I even know that Metro even existed. As a young college graduate working in Cornelius, it was at that time that Metro had adopted the Strategic Plan to Advance Racial Equity. That Metro staff were empowered and given the charge to go out in every corner of the region and knock on doors of community groups, of neighborhoods, and being like, what does your community think about this park? What does your community think about garbage and recycling? What does your community think about transit? In a way that I feel people had not really been engaged before. And it was at that moment in conversations that I was like, wow, Metro is a place that cares about me and my community, and also a place that anyone can make a difference. And 10 years later, now I'm on the dais. And I share that because this work is really about generations. It's about looking at the work of what we do through the lens of multiple cycles, multiple political cycles, multiple electoral cycles, and really trying to create a fertile grounds for opportunity for anyone to achieve their dreams. And I think I know in some ways Sporetti has helped me do that, and I am very much, our interns just left from ZAP, but as I was seeing them, all I could think about was what's going to be possible for you and what's going to be possible for the young people or for the working people, for all people in the region as a result of this work that we're going to be implementing. I can't wait to see it. Okay, so council, I'm going to adjourn our official business meeting and move us into a work session. Thank you to all our guests for being here. Before I start the work session, council, I think we've seen over the last year, we have started using some of our Thursdays for both dual council meeting and work sessions. Ann Bazzini and I, our council legislative advisor, we've been working to kind of create more of a practice to use the time that we have scheduled on Thursdays to try and get as much valuable maximum impact for the council. We've talked at length that the council needs a lot more work session time to work on important issues of policy direction, policy analysis, evaluation. And so going forward, you're going to begin to see us use Thursdays after our council meeting actions to also add council work sessions. As a part of that, we're also looking at like meeting technology and meeting streaming and different things to make sure that we create more consistency for folks that are in the audience, but also watching us online to make sure that the public can continue to engage with us in all elements of our business in the highest quality and degree possible. So that being said, I will now move forward on our work session. We have a few topics today. The first is future vision, and then we have an exciting update on the regional land bank study that the planning team has been working on. But first, future vision engagement and draft regional values. At our last work session about future vision, council, we heard and some of the upcoming events that were happening around the future vision project. Today, with staff, we're going to review some of the engagement findings that were more substantive, and we're going to have some time to discuss draft regional values and hear an updated plan for an artist grant program to support future vision engagement launch. I think we've gotten really clear from the council that we want to see more of our projects incorporate some element of art or culture and expression, and I thank Councilor Lewis for being one of the champions for a long time to continue to elevate that, and I'm happy that this is a part of this project as well. So I want to welcome Malou Wilkinson, Deputy Director of Planning, Development, and Research, Jessica Zadeb, Principal Regional Planner, Laura Combs, Associate Regional Planner, and Dana Lucero, Principal Regional Planner. I you have a presentation for us?
We do.
All right.
Thank you, President Gonzalez,
it
members
up.
of the Metro Council. We're really excited to be here today. Again, I'm Malou Wilkinson. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Deputy Director of Planning, Development, and Research. And, it was so exciting to hear both the presentation and the discussion about targeted universalism. And I want you all to know that we are working with our partners in DEI to figure out how to best apply the targeted universalism principles to the work in Future Vision. So we're really excited about that. And that's a tough act to follow, but we're also super excited about bringing you this update today on the Future Vision. And as you heard, we're really going to talk about three elements today. We're very excited to share an approach for integrating the arts even more into our planning and engagement following the guidance that you all provided us, led by Councillor Lewis earlier this year. And you amended some additional funds into our budget in June, and so we're going to talk about how we are hoping to deploy that. We're going to give you an update on the engagement that we've been undergoing and that we have to come. And we're going to talk with you about our regional values that are in draft form right now. Our Future Vision Commission has talked about them once. They're informed by all of the work that we've already done from an engagement perspective. We want to hear your thoughts, and then they'll go back to the Future Vision Commission. Next slide, please. So, again, I'm really excited to just turn this over to the team that we have here with you today. But first, I want to just review where we are in our roadmap towards updating our region's future vision for the next 50 years. And we just wrapped up a number of engagement. The red line on your screen shows where we are and the three main elements of this work. The engagement is really the major focus of our work. We will be, we also have the research component of it that includes the drivers of change and expert panels, which you've participated in some of them, and then bringing the actual vision, drafting that actual vision with the commission and members of our region. Where we are, you'll hear about some of the different components as the team talks, but I wanted to highlight one element, which is the Vision Summit that will be in the fall. It'll be in October, and that is our opportunity to really convene cross-sector leaders from across the region to begin drafting the aspirations. What we all hope for will form the core of our updated vision. Those will also be refined through a set of vision tables, including a workshop for MPAC and JPAC members in late October. Another really important element of this work is researching those large forces that we know will shape our region over the next 50 years. We're calling them drivers of change, and our consultant team is doing that work right now in terms of researching. They will also be bringing in some of the expert panel topics, such as the equity impacts that were talked about in the look back of our growth concept and where we are today. There was another expert panel focused on the future of human networks and as a foundation for human resiliency, and also the climate. So I'm going to turn this over now with this grounding and where we are. We're about halfway through our work here. I'm going to turn it over to Dana, and we're going to pause. We have really three chunks, and so we want to hear your feedback as we go along rather than waiting till the very end. So Dana, next slide, and we'll turn it over to Dana.
Great, thank you, Malou. Hello, Council. We're really excited to be here and respond to the request for guidance about the additional funding to integrate arts and culture into planning in this Future Vision project. So what we recognize is really three opportunities. First, most importantly and timely, is the ability to advance Metro Council Resolution 265574, which is the integrating arts and planning, arts and culture into planning and our engagement activities. We think that this is a great opportunity to continue the momentum from the Smart Growth America cohort that Metro participated in, to kind of re-enliven the March residency, the liveliness with the artists that we had in the building and the inspiration that brought to those who were there. And then what we'll see at the upcoming Future Fest with the arts and youth engagement. And that we think that what this scope of work will do will really activate the public's engagement in future vision, both in this like culmination, leading up to the culmination and launch phases. Next slide. So we've developed a scope a little bit further, and we see 4 kind of discrete sets of outcomes for this arts scope of work. The first is for the ability to build capacity for artists to engage in a Metro project. A lot of artists in the community don't know what Metro is, and the residency itself brought people into Metro who'd never been here before, both that participating artist residents and then the folks who came to the presentation. So what we want to do is create space for different voices and new perspectives, increase awareness of Metro and our role in the region within the arts community, and influence the Future Vision project in creative and impactful ways. Then building capacity for staff to integrate arts into planning projects. This, again, will implement Metro Council resolution passed in April. And really, the interdepartmental team that is participating in the Future Vision projects are gaining firsthand experience of what it means to work with artists and incorporate their perspectives and their practices, their creative practices, into their planning and engagement work. We also want to build capacity for artists to engage with the public. There's a whole segment of socially engaged artists that are doing really cool work out there in the community. And we have civic processes to give them an audience of people who want to engage all around the region. And then we'd like to also build capacity for the public to engage in civic projects with artists in public places. So this is a kind of multifaceted way of having really engaging opportunities for people to think about future vision, what life should be like in the region, what life is like now. So this will give us better engagement, will raise awareness of Metro, and increase the public sense of belonging in public spaces. We think that we can do this, if you go to the next slide, with these 4 elements over the course of the next 12-ish months. We'd like to engage an artist team, 3 to 5 artists that will kind of co-create with staff what this engagement process looks like, how we can have, how they can integrate arts into future around those milestones, and then co-create and carry out regional arts engagement opportunities. And we would like to have them engaged really pretty soon and through the post-launch phase. And then we'd like to use a significant amount of those resources for grants for artists and arts organizations, and we'll put out a call with the help of an artist, a prompt and some parameters for creative kind of, I love that we can't even conceive of what might come up with these grants, but for groups to really help engage people with Metro, our Future Vision aspirations, and through all of the different phases. Then we'd also like to envision some short-term artist-led engagements, kind of similar to the residency. They were only with us for 4 days with a few planning meetings. It could be even shorter than that, perhaps a few folks coming to the Vision Summit or other expert panels or whatnot. But really the opportunity to have creatively deploy short-term engagements with artists and community. And then the last is we certainly want to maybe make sure that we document and are able to have storytelling about this process, both to contribute to the total package of what we're delivering with Future Vision, but also to really capture this moment in time of what people really value. And so that's a really high level of what we want to do over the next 12 months with this funding. And we'd like your guidance, if you can go to the next slide. If the outcomes make sense, is there something else missing? Would you like to see more opportunities for Metro staff to engage in experiences like the artist residency? And then in what capacity you'd like to be involved in your district? So if it's helpful to go back to the outcome slide to reflect on that, we could, but I'd just love to hear your input.
All right, wonderful. Council, Councilor Lewis.
Sure, thank you very much. I am extremely enthusiastic about the direction of building capacity for us to engage both more of our constituents, but also our artists, and everybody is an artist in some sense or another. Whether it's that you dance when no one is watching, or you make doodles, or you actually have a practice. And I think we're obviously leaning towards engaging with folks in ways that are accessible. So when I look at the elements you've scoped, I think it's absolutely right. The place where I would kind of maybe add an asterisk is in your definition of public space. I think that very much lends itself to thinking about plazas, to thinking about libraries. But I also think it's very appropriate for us to help artists connect with folks receiving public services. So I'd love to be innovative around folks who are at a safety net clinic or at a food pantry, how they can engage in creativity and in placemaking as well. But I look forward to championing this in my district. I think it is valuable for Metro staff, planning staff, but any other staff who are able to be part of this.
Thanks, Counselor. I'm happy to hear that positive feedback. Would anyone else like to share any direction here? Can we put the questions back on the screen? Sorry. And Counselor Palacios?
Thank you, Council President. One of the pieces of the outcomes, first off, thank you. Great work. One of the pieces I was interested in was relating to the team of 3 to 5 regional artists to help develop outreach, process, all that kind of stuff. And then there was a line about socially engaged artists. And so I'm really interested in the process of, or what we imagine that outreach to be, because there are a lot of incredibly talented artists throughout the metro region who aren't socially engaged. So I'm curious about definition and outreach and what this infrastructure could look like for our region. I'm also very excited for my district and to engage on it.
One element that kind of surprised us in our cohort was that we, through the 10 years of doing our community placemaking grants, we had naturally identified hundreds of groups and individuals of folks that are doing socially engaged work around the region. And those grants are about community building. And so we have this network of groups that we've already had really good experiences with because we've supported their work and we funded them and showed up for them. And so that was a surprise, but we should have known that.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. And yeah, just an encouragement to continue growing that lovely group that we have of socially engaged partners.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you both for your comments. Not seeing other hands raising, just want to echo great work and love to see us making investments that are like targeted special for this specific value that we want to continue building on. I do think that with the kind of the economic conditions that we're in, the kind of the budgetary environment that many of our local governments are in, that like it sometimes creates this sense of, you know, we need to lean into some kind of austerity or cut the good things and only do the basics. And I mean, I think investing in things like this and this arts work is actually what's going to help us turn the energy in the region around our pride, our civic pride, around actually the kind of the inclinations of Oregonians to express what we see for the world and for ourselves. And so that's a wonderful overlay of projects, investments, and values. Love it. Thank you.
Wonderful. President Gonzalez, that we'll find that will tie into, as we get to the conversation about the draft regional values, you know, there is a very strong connection between arts and a thriving arts community and a thriving economy and a thriving, healthy ecosystem of people. So I really appreciate the way that you defined that. All right, thank you, Council. So we're going to move on to the next topic now. And I think this is Laura.
Yep. Good morning, Council. Happy to be back with you all. My name is Laura Combs, and I use she, her pronouns. Yeah, I know we brought you last work session a lot of information about the engagement work that we had been doing and some preliminary results around the themes that we heard from the survey. So I'm just going to touch on some of that again before providing some additional information on our engagement efforts. So just a refresh, and this ties into what Dana was just talking about, we really kicked off this phase of engagement in the public eye with that artist residency back in early March. And since then, we had distributed a broad public survey using a variety of communication channels, both within Metro and with all of our government partners and community partners to help get the word out throughout the region. We developed prepaid postcards, bookmarks, and conversation kits to provide different ways for people to engage and connect with the project. We received about 100 postcards and conversation kits back to us, as well as our over 2,200 survey responses. We distributed physical materials in libraries across all 3 counties. And about halfway through the engagement window, we were noting areas of the region where we were getting lower response rates, and we decided to work with some community engagement liaisons to help increase our reach to those parts of the region and to community members in their languages that they're most comfortable speaking. So that resulted in another 175 survey responses to be submitted in Spanish, Russian, Chinese, and Vietnamese. And while we always know we can continue to improve our engagement processes to reach more community members, that was a big win for us to pause and try to find other ways to reach more folks in the community during this first window. We have a lot of lessons learned that we will carry into developing our approach for our next broad window of engagement, which will be in early 2027. During this phase, we've also been working closely with our youth committee members. This is our group of 21 young people, ages 15 through 24, from all across the region. They've been meeting with us monthly and receiving very similar content as that we bring to our Future Vision Commission, and been sharing their ideas with us about their reflections on draft values, what they thought about the engagement results, and also really critically guiding the development of Future Fest, which is our youth summit event that will be happening next month on August 15th. I'll share a little bit more about that later. And another exciting element of this engagement window was being able to bring more artists into the work. Thanks to the recommendation of one of our Future Vision Commission members, we are connected with 2 different poetry organizations, Boca Ardiente and the People's Poets, and we're able to support poetry workshop and then a poetry showcase on Juneteenth. And that was kind of the capstone, the ending of this first phase of broad engagement. Next slide, please. So when we synthesized all of the information we received from our surveys, postcards, and conversation kits, these were the 3 core themes that emerged. So the first one is around when we were asking participants to use 3 words or phrases to describe what they value about the region and what they want to see in the future. These were the common themes that we heard around a love for nature and our natural resources, an emphasis on communities and feeling safe, a focus on wanting the region to be affordable and address concerns around cost of living. When folks gave us information about growth, the one commonality among those comments was around growth not compromising community bonds, the natural environment, and the sustainable future that are part of those aspirations for 2077. And then the last theme was really the top concern that we heard across the survey and conversation kits and postcards was around homelessness and housing instability. And folks really sharing with us that if we are able to resolve that, that will make realizing all of the other aspirations more possible. Next slide, please. Another part of this engagement phase is hearing directly from our youth committee. It's been really important for us to elevate their voices in every stage of developing the vision, and we asked them as well to weigh in about their top concerns. We saw a lot of commonality between what they shared with us and what we heard in the survey, but a couple of other themes around mental health, education, and youth representation and youth decision-making power were highlights from their feedback. That was a bit different from what we were hearing through those other channels. Next slide, please. So just a reminder, we're bringing together all of the information that we heard from our regional values engagement, from those conversation kits and postcards, from the youth committee, from all the presentations and roadshows that we did, and then also bringing in themes from regional visions. Doing a scan of regional visions was part of our scoping process, and when we were looking at where we might have had gaps in participation, returning to those regional visions and uplifting the engagement that was done as part of developing those was another way for us to help address any of those gaps as we developed our draft values. Next slide. All right, so now I get to talk a little bit more about Future Fest. Since our last meeting with you all, we've continued to really build out this event. We are going to have a great collaboration with Suba, who is our artist consultant for the project. She's helping us connect with several different artists to take part of this event. We're imagining to have an interactive visual art, mural type piece be a part of the event, as well as having performance art. So she's helping us connect with artists to be a part of the day. We also are really excited to be working with youth vendors. So we'll have youth photographer, videographer, hopefully some youth journalists be a part of the event. We have some folks coming to do a screen printing setup as well. We have invited several of youth serving community-based organizations to participate in a free resource fair. So we'll have up to 15 different booths set up in the space where folks that we work with are invited to come and share their resources with youth participants. And we're just continuing to try to get the word out as much as we can right now by connecting with all of the organizations we know of, the youth councils in the region, just to share about this opportunity and to invite young people to register. We'll also be having free food, which we've heard a lot about. We just need to lead with that, and we'll have a stronger interest from young folks. So very excited to have that, and that is August 15th, coming up soon. Also,
And community service hours. If you are communicating with youth that you know, that's an important thing for some of them.
Another perk, yes, yes. And then as Malou mentioned, we are also working towards planning for the Vision Summit on October 8th. And then we'll have an MPAC and JPAC vision table at the end of October. So that'll be space for those folks to come together and have their own dedicated discussion on developing aspirations. One of the main components of all of these events listed is developing those aspirations, being able to hear about the values, to hear about the drivers of change research, and then work towards developing that last main component of the vision. Next slide, please. And this summer, our team is very busy being out in the community. We really kicked this off over the last 2 weekends, being at the Sherwood Robin Hood Festival, Wood Village City Night Out, and at Viva Tualatin. And we are continuing to be in different parts of the region throughout the summer. And we are sharing information about the draft values with the community, sharing just about the project generally. We also have a lot of information about Parks and Nature. We've been working closely with Council Office and GAPD and Parks and Nature to coordinate on sharing all of our materials and across all of the places that will be out this summer. And yeah, we're still trying to work out, I think, a couple more events, but these are the places that we're committed to right now. Next slide. And I'll hand it off to Jess.
Great. Thanks, Laura. I hope everyone noted the photo there of Malou talking to Maid Marian and her court. Some excellent young folks out there in the city of Sherwood who hold very important roles. So I'm here to talk about these draft regional values. Laura had a slide that summarized the way that these have come together. So just as a reminder, this is really bringing together what we heard in that spring engagement, looking at the other visions and long-range plans of other governments, institutions, nonprofits around the region, and some state-level ones. And then also really hearing from the folks at the youth committee, got the first look at these and provided some feedback. And then it was that version that went to the Future Vision Commission at their last meeting. What we're sharing with you today are values that were revised based on the commission's feedback. So we want to get your discussion about these today. We'll take your comments and thoughts, create and bring them to the commission at their next meeting as well.
I'm going to go through them one by one. You all have a printed copy of this in front of you, and we emailed a document to Councilor Nolan. That's just a reference for when we get around to the questions at the end of this segment. Okay, next slide, please. So each of these 6 values has what is easiest maybe to think of as a headline. That is the short form of what it is we value. I think based on what Laura talked about in that summary of the engagement, none of these should be terribly surprising. I will say that we, as she mentioned, have taken these out at a couple events so far this past weekend, asking folks which of them feel most important to them. And we know that we've got some wordsmithing to do on some of these to make them a little bit more general public friendly, so that it is obvious what we mean when we have a very shorthand description of what a value is. So just know that we're going to work on it. But these are the 6 kind of headlines of the values that we have so far. I wanted to point out that a creative culture, that we value a creative culture, is something that came out of strong comments from the Future Vision Commission and staff feedback, that this was something that's unique to our region, that really needs to show up at a top line in this vision. All right, next slide, please. So this connection to nature is something where we believe we are intertwined with nature and are accountable for what we leave behind. So part of the goal of this value is to reflect people's love, excitement, deep connection with nature in this region, whether that is through experiencing green space with their families, through having clean air to breathe, for there being clean, cold water for habitat, but also just the experience of literally visually experiencing nature and green space every day as they are walking, taking transit, biking, driving through this region and seeing green. So we wanted to make sure to capture that as a top line. All right, next slide, please. This is one that at this point is perhaps a little wonky in its wording, kind of insider language potentially of belonging with shared power, but to get the point across that really this is a value, interestingly, that also kind of showed up in the 1995 vision, our existing one, where we want to make sure that we're creating a region where people can find their place and feel comfortable in it, and then that they also hold real power over decisions that shape it. So working toward a region where that value is expressed through getting people involved and excited and having the capacity and time and creating processes where civic engagement can be actually something that people really participate in and are able to shape it. All right, next slide, please. This is pretty straightforward. We value a prosperous economy. This is the foundation of thriving for people in this region. Folks should be able to build a life here and have a share in the prosperity that they help create. The idea here is that our economy isn't just creating value for the sake of creating value, it's creating value for the sake of the people who live here and their ability, their family's ability to build a life. And that really relies on good jobs and fair wages. Those were two themes that really came up in the commission discussion as just pieces and words that need to show up when we talk about what the economy is here. Okay, next slide, please. We value safe and healthy communities and believe that people should be able to live free from fear and danger and have the ability to thrive. This is a tricky one when we start to talk about safety. As the bottom line here notes, safety is not the same for everyone, and we need to recognize that. It means different things, both in terms of people's experience and in the solutions to help them feel safe. We also want to call out that the region really is only as safe and healthy as the folks who are the most vulnerable by whatever measures that vulnerability is categorized. The team has also been talking about whether there is a way to phrase this in a more positive light. Living free from fear and danger is kind of the negative framing of this. We'll work on that aspect of the wording here. All right, next slide, please. We value places that connect us. This is really inherent to who we are as Greater Portland. We believe in access to places that are easy to navigate, bring communities together, and create joy. This opportunity to create public spaces, in particular places that allow people to come together with folks who are similar to and different from them, and that are places where people can go that they don't have to pay to be in. That's something that's come up really strongly from the youth committee, feeling like they need those, as we call in Planner World, third spaces that are not part of commerce. All right, next slide, please. So this is the last one. We value a creative culture and believe that our stories, traditions, innovation, and creativity define who we are as a region. This is both who we are for ourselves, continuing those histories and traditions and legacies, but also it's how people view us from the outside. We are really seen as a region that is creative and innovative. That brings people here, whether they are moving here, whether they are tourists. It also brings businesses and it brings people together in this region. As Malou mentioned and President Gonzalez alluded to, arts and culture and the creative arts are part of our super important part of our economy as well. So we know we need to make the ties both to the community and like heart space and importance of tradition and connection within this creative culture value, and also its importance to our economy. All right, so those are the 6 values. Next slide. Just this is the set of headlines. You have them in front of us. Next slide. These are the questions that we want you to talk about today. I will hand it back to President Gonzalez to moderate a discussion around these questions, but we really want to hear from you whether they reflect your understanding of the region's beliefs and priorities. Are there elements that could be modified to add something that makes it more unique to our region? Really gets that flavor and helps us accomplish the guidance that you gave us in scoping that this vision needs to be ours. And then lastly, are there voices that are not represented that you know of that need to be in here somehow? I will say we're not necessarily looking for wordsmithing right now. We'll do that on our side, but we would love your input. If you have any flags, though, of words that just like really hit you wrong, that would be great to hear.
Wonderful, thank you. And if we could keep the questions up on the screen while we have conversation, discussion would be wonderful. Let's see, Councilor Simpson, I see your hand up.
Yes, actually, it was in regard to one of the slides. If you can go back to "We believe, but the fear" part.
Yes. That is safe and healthy communities.
Yes. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
So you said y'all want to pull that language out.
Well, I think the question is, what's your opinion about having this? Right now, it's kind of in a negative frame, right? We're saying people should live free from fear and danger, not people should experience a place that is safe. That is one thing we are curious about your opinion on.
Yeah, I see.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, this is America. Some of us do live in fear.
Yes.
In our communities, and I think it is appropriate for us to call that out, especially being someone growing up in the South, where governments will not take this kind of stance. I think it's an opportune time for us to really say and call out that people in this region don't live safely. I mean, we have ICE that are going after our own community members. We got Black folks that are afraid of policing. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. So I applaud you for calling it out. In my estimation, you shouldn't change it.
Thank you, Councilor Simpson. I will say, when I was out in Sherwood tabling, there were at least 3 Post-it notes that were put up on our board from children. And these were pretty young children. One of them said, "No kidnapping," is something that they would like to see in 50 years in the future. And 2 others were related to safety. So I appreciate you helping us think through what the right words are that share the values that we would like to see in our region. Thank you.
Of course, and I do want to touch a little bit on the youth, just to touch, like, y'all collected some feedback from them. Are their perspectives this far apart from adult perspectives, or humans are humans and we all have commonality? Is that your approach, or has been your observation in terms of the values that you've collected?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to when we brought them to the youth committee. We had kind of like a scale, and we did this the same way for the commissioners, of like 1 to 10, and you could put a dot on how much the draft value, like, was it right on, was it really far away? And most of the youth responses were like between 7 and 9. So we didn't see a ton of outliers of them thinking that things were really far off. And they provided a lot of additional nuance that made its way into some of these revised values. So I think, we were feeling like we were mostly aligned with how they were feeling.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one thing that we talked a little bit about this morning in reviewing these together was in the second value, belonging with shared power, that power is actually really an important word. It's influence is not enough. That the youth conversation in particular is looking for a seat at the table.
Right.
Yep.
Power looks different.
Yes.
To many people.
Right. Yeah, and power. This came up this morning too. Like, power doesn't always necessarily mean you get what you want, and that you have that you always get a yes. It means that you are there, and your opinion is valued and respected within the conversation where a decision is made.
Okay. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Counselor Lewis?
Sure, thank you so much. I think picking up on Counselor Simpson's kind of reflection on the safe and healthy communities pillar, I see your questioning of that, about asking if the time we're in can be escaped and make this more of a timeless document that might endure 50 years in a different way. Since, when we look at the last one, we make jokes about Blockbuster Video and the nice woodcut on the typed print. There is no way of avoiding the fact that this is a moment in time. It will not be timeless. Like, we will always look back and know that this was created in a post-COVID, back-rolling democracy moment where apparently it's okay to call an elected official daddy, right? Like, that is going to be the moment that this thing was created in. We can't escape it. Let's lean into it. And I think that's why it's particularly important to have the pillars of safe and healthy community and prosperous economy, because those are the things we're grappling with in the public discourse the most. They're surrounded by the things that are not talked about, which is our connection to nature, our creative culture. We're not talking about that, other than maybe banning foie gras. But we have, I'm being real frank today. I had a concussion on Monday. I blame all this on the concussion.
Come on, keep going, concussion.
Prosperous economy, safe and healthy communities, there's no way to wordsmith ourselves into a neutral state or a timeless state. Lean into it, we're in the right direction. And I see you've taken some feedback I've given earlier on some of these wordsmithing issues, and you're totally doing it right. So thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Counselor. Let's see, Counselor Huang, then Counselor Palacios, and then we'll go to Counselor Nolan.
Yeah, thank you, President Gonzalez. And I think these 6 are great. I'm just wondering, did the concept of self-determination come up in any of these? When I'm thinking about, I think one thing that connects all of them is people in our region, where you're, born in your zip code shouldn't determine your future. And if you want to live in a big old house, in the suburbs or in an apartment downtown, you should have that choice and ability to decide for your family. And I think that speaks to all of these. But I didn't see that come up. So that's just, one thought is I think it speaks to the power a bit, but it's not just power and decision-making, it's agency over, your, where you want to go and where you want to end up. And the factors that, might be seen as disadvantages aren't limiting your ability to reach your maximum potential. So something like that, I don't know, that speaks to me a lot, because I think everyone wants to have agency in their decision-making. Another thing that I don't see, we've had previous presentations about the corridors and center strategy in the last future vision. I don't know how we take these values and turn it into a planning strategy like that. So hopefully that's a thing later on. But I don't see the word like transportation or anything like that here. I see one reference to housing, but I think the things that, you know, we have a lot of influence over aren't coming out, especially in transportation. So I know, yeah, I'm just wondering how it turns from these are the stated values to here's a planning document that, you know, guides our growth. And if you could maybe speak a bit to that.
Sure.
that'd be helpful.
So on that last point, these are intentionally not really calling out the ways that we get, or the ways that we actualize these values. These are intended to be a foundation from which the region builds a set of aspirations. And those are the statements where we will get to a point of saying, you know, in 50 years, people will be able to take public transit to their job throughout the region. I mean, that's not a great example, but it's really in those aspirations that will be the core of the, like, what is it we want to see in the future, where that's expressed in the vision itself. And then subsequent to that, we'll be coming up here at Metro with an implementation plan for the shorter term that starts us on the path toward that 50-year future. And so it's within those aspirations that we get into talking about the ways that we actualize, both as Metro and other parties in the region, like what does it look like to have a safe and healthy community? Does that make sense? Like, so we're not necessarily, the point of the values is not to touch on land use, you know, economic development, housing, transportation, kind of all of the systems that make up the region. It's really to say these are the things that are kind of the bedrock of how we want to form those systems.
Okay. I guess my feedback would be like, you know, we have these 6 outcomes, like what's the connective tissue between them? And I think like you were talking about connection to nature or safe communities or your job or places that connect us, like you gotta like get to them. And you should also have a choice, right? It's again to the self-determination of like, I wanna get to my job and I can have the choice of taking transit. I could walk, I could bike, I could drive. So yeah, maybe just a little more like how we finding the intersectionality and connecting them all together.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Palacios?
Yeah, thank you, Council President. While we're still on the topic of safe and healthy communities, I want to call back to comments from Councilor Simpson and Lewis, and to echo Councilor Simpson's quote of Childish Gambino, "This is America." There we are. And it is of my belief that I do.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. I said, you know ball, that's what I said.
Yeah. I think we are. I think this moment is timeless. I think if we look back in the last 20, 40 years, a lot of the big 60, like a lot of the big things that have happened are really, really recent in American history. And things even beyond what is most recent in the last 5 years of this moment are just telling of things that have been embedded in our communities for a long time. And so I do like the tone set here, because I do think that this, at least in the immediate future, and I think in the coming years, will still be something that we need to tackle and be mindful about. The other thing, a little bit, is the conversation of what we just had around the absence of things like transit and housing in here that are called out. I understand better about how this is more about foundation, not necessarily the systems of action, but just the values that will direct it. With that said, I think what I would like to see is maybe something that names or helps guide in this thought process here is accessibility of community. So thinking about the accessibility of our transit, accessibility of our housing, of all these different programs without naming them, but just really putting emphasis on our community's ability to access these types of things as we look forward.
Yep, yep, thank you.
Thanks. Councilor Nolan?
Thanks, President Gonzalez. Thanks for this summary and this distillation of the conversations that have been going on, which I know are extensive. I think there's a tension. I'm attributing this to a tension between not wanting something that is soon to be antiquated while also trying to be unique to this region. I have a different take on it. I see all of these as ones that if you took them to most metropolitan areas in the country, people would say, yeah, that's us. Yeah, that's us. I will admit that if you took these 6 to other communities, large cities around the country, and said, if you could only name 6 values, would these 6 be them? There might be some differences among those. Say they might put something else on there, but these are, to me, I could see every major city that I'm aware of attaching itself to each of these, perhaps interpreting them differently, because while your additional explanations narrow it a bit, I don't see in it that they narrow them enough to be Portland area specific. Something else in terms of messaging and the power of words. Each of these is constructed beginning with, we believe everyone. And as I read it and as I hear it from you, there's an unspoken or unwritten attachment to the end of them. We believe everyone should live free from fear and danger, and somebody else should deliver that for them. I don't see anywhere here where these are values that we not only say should happen, but we individually and as the Portland region will take responsibility to make sure they happen, or to move extensively and pretty aggressively toward making them happen. I also am not as much afraid of going into specifics even at this higher level, because I think the specifics are indeed where we separate ourselves from a city like Cleveland, Ohio, or Tyler, Texas, or, well, Texas would be more like Austin, about the same size. So I was hoping to have something that really people who are familiar with Portland, whether they live and work here or have visited here, would say, yeah, that's Portland. If you did a blind test on them, people would say, this one's about Portland. So I would encourage pushing that in the future discussions over the next several months to helping people really probe themselves about whether this is something they kind of hope innocently will happen, or if this is something they want to put their shoulder into to make sure it happens. Moving over a little bit to who is not represented, I don't know, but I want to ask what specific engagements we made to people who don't belong to groups and don't go to neighborhood events and don't go to the kinds of events that we visit, because they're working 2 jobs and their spouse is working another job and they just can't make the time to do that. We talk about our most vulnerable in some of these values, and I would just like to know have we really invited and captured their voices in settings where they feel free to be candid and open, and not settings where they might feel that they have to be to fit into a mold that someone else is expecting.
I think part of the answer to that last question is that the main vehicle for engagement in that first round was a low barrier online survey. It was about 5 questions. We tried to get the word out about that as broadly as we possibly could through social media, through printed materials, through partner organizations. We did reach out in that time to community-based organizations and offered support for them to help us reach communities that are less likely maybe to engage with a government process. Folks are really busy right now engaging with the current state of America. And so we did not get a lot of uptake in that first round from our community-based organization partners. And I think that's understandable, which is why for this next round, we're planning on reaching out much earlier and having kind of a more, I guess, a more defined opportunity for them to help get their community's voices into the process.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Jess. I would suggest also thinking about different ways of framing the representation, the representativeness of our participants.
Mm-hmm.
Do we ask how many people are in the process of owning their own home? Do we ask how many people are renting their home? Do we ask how many people don't have their own home and are depending on the kindness of family and friends? Have we asked them about their education status? Have we asked them about their employment status? Have they been unemployed for a period of 6 months or more in the last 5 years? Those kinds of things that really would assure us, or at least assure me much more comfortably, that we have some insight into all the populations that we're responsible for, and that we, through our targeted universalism, want to raise up as a way of raising up the entire community.
Yeah, those are not typically questions that get asked within demographics on Metro's community engagement, but I think that we can work with organizations that would get at populations that would have different answers to those questions. We did ask people when they applied to the Future Vision Commission a couple more detailed demographics questions. So on that body, which is developing and recommending this vision to council, we do know, for instance, that there are people who are both renters and owners, people who live in single-family houses and multifamily housing, people who get around the region by driving, taking transit, walking, biking, rolling. So we did get into a little bit more detail about the identity of that important group that's going to be helping to shape this.
And
point taken.
One final comment, Mr. Chair, if I might. Sure. Finding ways to engage people who don't get our emails, don't get our, I don't know if we used postal cards or anything to bring attention to it. I know they're not standard, but that's exactly why I think they're important, because we don't normally get that input. They don't vote as often. People who are struggling with financial security, we know, don't vote as often. So we don't even see them in our bond measure elections or our council elections. They don't go to groups because of whatever other choices they make to keep their families together. So getting outside our standard mold of approaching these, our standard approach, I think would really improve the uniqueness and the truly shared community element of it. Asking all the people who participate, you value these things, and that's great, and we join you in valuing them. What are you willing to do, or what are you willing to pay someone else to do, like a government employee, so that this happens? So that it isn't just, yeah, I'd like all kinds of goodies, but not if I have to pay for all of them.
Counselor Nolan, thank you for that. I think we are doing our best to reach as many groups as we can, as many people through different ways. And I'm hopeful that through the work that Dana described earlier on, that's one avenue to reach some groups that we don't normally, we're not normally able to reach. And I think Counselor Lewis's suggestion to kind of expand our definition of public spaces and consider if there are ways where services are being provided to connect the artists and the engagement, that might be one way that we can reach some of those people that you're referring to. I also wanted to talk just a little bit about the idea and the concern that you brought up about the delivery of achieving these outcomes. And I just wanted to remind us that this future vision, this 50-year future vision is required in our charter that was a voter-approved charter. The future vision, as you know, when we first started this out, we were really clear that Metro is delivering a future vision that goes way beyond what Metro can deliver. And the only way that we can get to this vision that we are working so hard to define is through collaboration with a variety of partners. That's one of the reasons that last October we really tried for that cross collaboration, the event that we had, I forget what we called it, our shared future. And that's another approach that we're hoping for in October with the Vision Summit. And as we move towards implementation, it's really critical that we are identifying ways that we can partner with others, because Metro cannot deliver this vision. This is a vision that is done collaboratively. What Metro can deliver on is, you know, the areas of responsibility that we have. And so once we have the future vision, I'll remind us all that our next step is to update our regional framework plan and functional plans, which are ways that we have the ability to implement some of the components of what we're talking about in this vision.
Thanks for that, Malou. I appreciate it. I'm of the school that adheres to, if you want me to understand your values, don't give me a bunch of statements. Show me your budget, time or money, and I'll tell you what your values are. Because that's how we allocate what are not limitless resources. And I want this to reflect that we don't think people who are the least powerful in our communities, people who have the fewest resources, should have to bring them up to the standards of living free from danger and fear, living in affordable housing. That I hope this document is indeed a document for the entire region, not just Metro, but all of our local partners, all of the businesses operating here, all of the individuals living here. But it has to show that there's been some thinking through our collective capacity to deliver on these things.
Thanks, Counselor. Thank you. I appreciate that last frame of collective capacity. You know, I want to say, as the chair of the Future Vision Commission, I have seen staff break the mold of what I think is our traditional engagement, going above and beyond and asking anyone and everyone that is willing to do more to help to activate community, creating conversation kits, working with Future Vision Commission members to host events in their communities. Similarly, you know, I think in the spirit of collective capacity, I know that staff really welcomes the support of council, and I know many counselors have supported with hosting events in their districts, having conversations with constituents in their districts, hosting just things in general. So I think staff shared a really great list of different events happening this summer in every single corner of the region. If folks would like to see additional events, I would really encourage, if you as individual counselors or your policy teams, if you have the ability to host something in your district or to bring people together or to go out hand in hand with staff, I think we should absolutely do that. I see they're doing everything they can, and also always welcome our help and to leverage our community relationships. All right. I think that will do it for this. Staff, I appreciate the work. It's been really great to see the iterations of values. I get to see it up close in many circumstances. I want to echo the things that have been shared. And I want to come back to just really quickly, sorry, before we go to our next item, the Safe and Healthy Communities bit, which Councilor Simpson, Councilor Lewis, and others have talked about. I think I like the framing that we have now. And I worry that kind of shifting to a different one would make it too ambiguous, too broad, too out there. And I think saying something that matters is important. And I like Councilor Lewis's statement too about it's okay that this is a point in time.
Yeah.
And we really want to stand by a clear value, and it resonated with me. I wanted to share that in that bit. All right, thank you. I hope this was a helpful feedback from the council. Yeah. All right, council, we have one more work session item on regional land banking. At the beginning of the year, I asked council for its support in the development of the Housing Production Accelerator Fund. That was our first vote, our first council action of 2026. And that fund also included land banking as a tool to reduce barriers for affordable housing and to develop livable communities. Staff are back today with an overview of key questions, a summary of feedback from regional partners, and a proposal for a legislative concept. From planning, development, and research, we have Andrea Pastor, a senior development project manager, and Brian Harper, a principal regional planner. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President Gonzalez, members of Metro Council. Good to be here today. Brian Harper with Community Investments Group in the Planning Department. Would our slides show up? Okay. Thank you. We're going to update you on some items here on the regional land banking study that we've been undertaking. Next slide, please. So just briefly, we're going to go over why land banking, why now, and I hope you'll bear with me. We're going to do a little thought exercise in that section, talk about what's it like now and what it might be like in the future. We'll just check in with the timeline so everybody understands where we're at in this process. We'll do a little bit of grounding with background on land banking as it applies sort of to our region and nationwide a little bit, and then Andrea will take it from there, talking about the work we've done with our partners under key considerations and this wonderful legislative concept we're going to talk about potentially here at the very high level. Next slide. So why land banking, why now? I think it's pretty important to start with that we're here because of the work in the Regional Housing Coordination Strategy. So land banking was one of the, I believe, 16 strategies that came out of that work. And so we are undertaking this effort to look at implementation of that strategy. Really, the idea is to increase the supply and quality of affordable housing across the greater Portland region. And to that end, the working group we put together is identifying structure and a high-level process for this entity that potentially could be public in nature, but would acquire, maintain, hold, and prepare and transfer land, and would serve with accountability to multiple jurisdictions in the broader community. So that's the basis of this. So I want to start with a thought exercise. So I'm going to, bear with me. I did not have time to memorize all of this that was written down, so I'm going to be reading a little bit of it. But I want you to start by imagining that right now there's a large 10-acre site with a major shopping center along a high-capacity transit line that is suddenly available for sale in our region. It's located in a diverse and vibrant, but potentially economically struggling community. The area's residents have hoped that someday this maybe half-empty shopping center would become something that might improve their community. And as some of them, when they find out that it's going up for sale, they call their elected officials and say, hey, we really think this is something that you should think about buying and helping the community with. Planners from Metro and the city meet. They take a look at it and they say, oh, this is a great investment, but there's a problem. We don't have the funds to purchase the site at this asking price. Now, it's in a new TIF district, but there's no funds that have accrued yet for this. So no one has budgeted for this opportunity, and there's no money for it right now. Meetings are held, a lot of talking happens, decisions are not made because there's no framework to make those decisions. So no one even knows how to weigh them and what sets this apart from someplace else. We just haven't really talked that through. So the site goes to auction potentially, or a private buyer comes in and takes it with cash. They don't even do a due diligence because perhaps it's at auction. Maybe there was a gas station on the corner. Maybe there's been potential for contamination, and that's why maybe a lot of the government partners are also very skittish at looking at it because it's a liability they could take on that would go against their general fund potentially. So the speculator gets it, and they turn it around and say immediately to the government who they know is interested, want to buy it for double the price I paid for it? That is not a story that's out in the ether. That has actually happened several times in this region, and it's experience we've had as staff, particularly the TOD program and the site acquisition program. This transformative properties, particularly as we've seen interest rates rise and development get more difficult to finance, more of these properties are becoming available quickly. Now, next slide. Well, let's go to the next step of this imagination, which is, let's imagine that same site comes on the market, but there's a regional land banking program in place. And they're the first to know because the brokers they work with alert them to these opportunity sites immediately. So the visiting of staff to the site is really to discuss a plan of action where the sites, where we do acknowledge that the TIF district exists and the funds are not there yet, but they are there for future improvements. And so if somebody could acquire the property and hold it for just a short period of time and get it ready for development, there would be an opportunity for success. The community engagement process has already been set up through the TIF district, and the agreements have already been worked through between the local jurisdiction and Metro, potentially as one of the land bank partners. So there's no question about priority. There's no question about how we work together because that's already been established. If it's based on the framework of the site acquisition program, even better. Partners trust that program, have trusted that approach. Meanwhile, the land bank, remember, has a revolving pot of money potentially so it can fund purchase. And that's thanks to partnership with local foundation that has program-related investment dollars that they want to invest long-term in site acquisitions for affordable housing. It meets the land bank's clearly articulated investment criteria. And the land bank is not as worried about environmental liability because its general fund is much smaller. It has just as much opportunity to access a prospective purchase agreement with the state or state and federal grants, just like we do at Metro. But in this case, we're not putting Metro's general fund at risk or any other local partner's general fund at risk. So it can take risks that maybe we cannot or are unwilling to do. The letter is drafted within a week of the property going on the market. That's how quick it can move if you have something like this in place. Some of that housing, a vast majority of that housing would likely be affordable, but in some cases, some of that housing might also be market rate, and that gets community who's made this very clear, the mix of housing types they want to see. And in the process, it's a fraction of the time that we would have spent normally. So that's keep that in your mind as we talk about what we're talking about. This isn't just about 10-acre sites or 5-acre sites. This is about sites all over the region, including half-acre infill sites that go so quickly because we don't have the capacity to organize around getting them, particularly if we don't have a housing bond that we're operating here at Metro. Next slide. So we're going to shift now just so we can check in with the timeline. So as you remember, we were here back in the spring to start this process and discussing what we're going to do. Phase 1 of that work wrapped up at the end of the spring. We are now right there in the middle. Phase 2, where we're convening regional partners. In your packet, I believe there was a list of those we have invited and been talking to and working with in our working group. So this includes housing developers, both private and nonprofit, community-based organizations, and of course, all the jurisdictional staff that are clearly interested in this work through the Regional Housing Coordination Strategy. The idea is at the end of October or mid-October, we would be coming back to you with a framework for an approach to implementation. And with the partners we would have identified, hopefully, that would want to sit at the table and work through that. And Andrea will get into that. That will be our phase 3 you see later that would come all the way through next year. Next slide. Just a quick overview. I think it's important to ground yourself in land banking in general. So you can see, we'll start with the map. You can see that the vast majority of enabling legislation that allows for land banks is existing in the East Coast, Midwest, and South of the United States. And there's very specific reasons for that. A lot of those areas are looking at a lot of abandoned tax foreclosure issue properties, dilapidated properties, a lot of disinvestment. Land banks started out like this many years ago, 60s and 70s. There's been a lot of shift now in what land banks are focused on. You can see Washington on this map just passed enabling legislation for an affordable housing land bank. So it's it's the first West Coast state to have that legislation in place specifically for what we're talking about. Land banks can have a whole range of tools at their disposal, and it is different in every one of them. No two land banks are the same. There is at least 300 plus land banks or land banking programs in existence in these states that you see here in blue. So it's very well documented in how they are structured and how they're put together. Of course, there's governance models you have to think about, and again, it's different everywhere you go. So that's really important to understand that what you're building is something very unique to the place in which it's going to operate, and that is true for all of the land banks around the country. Next slide. It's really important to acknowledge that we do have enabling legislation for land banks, and even though that didn't show up on your map, and that's because this is a very narrowly tailored enabling legislation that was passed in 2015. It's just about obtaining contaminated properties and trying to deal with the liability concerns that come with governments acquiring those properties. Unfortunately, in the 11 years it's been in place, nobody has utilized this enabling legislation. Clackamas County came close in 2019. COVID hit, it pretty much cratered their opportunity to get it funded. They were very much focused on industrial and job land, so not housing, but they came close. But it is important to note that this enabling legislation does not do many of the things that are sort of critical for acquisition of properties and making that a quicker process and a more efficient process. So, next slide. And then finally, before we get into sort of what we're hearing from our partners, we just want to highlight that where we started in this conversation with our partners was with three sort of distinct model types, so we can have the conversation about what does it mean if you use this model, what does it mean if you use this model, and talk about those trade-offs. But we know that this is not a cookie cutter approach. We're not going to take a model and just plop it into the region. This is more like taking the elements of each one of these and building something that works for the best for the partners that are interested here. So what you're going to see come out of this is not something that's going to look exactly like what's written on the screen or like any other probably land bank around the country. It's going to be very specific to here and unique to here. And I think we're seeing that we're starting from a really great place of the site acquisition program being something people understand and know. And so there's a lot of trust in that regard about how Metro ran and has run that process. And I think you'll see that when Andrea talks a little bit here about like what we're hearing from our partners. So I'm going to turn it over to her and she's going to take you through the rest.
Thank you, Council. Next slide, please. So in our first two working group meetings and in the one-on-one consultations that we've been holding with interested partners, we've determined that there are 6 key consideration areas that we are going to guide our recommendations for next steps. In this early phase of framework design, we're really focusing on the top 3 because those have been identified by our partners as their main priorities for this early phase. That would be, really questions of governance, financing, and impact. And while the detailed questions of acquisition, disposition, and what to do with the land while the land bank holds it will be more kind of in-depth, addressed in depth in phase 3 as we're doing program design and policy development. So we'll go through each quickly and talk about what we're hearing in terms of trade-offs. Next slide, please. First, figuring out how a land banking program will make decisions was the top priority for our current working group participants. Our partners have been putting in the political work ahead of time to make sure that the land bank can be nimble and effective and take advantage of opportunities that we know are out there. Primarily, the group has discussed the need to balance local representation on any program governing or oversight board with efficiency and accountability. The working group has raised and staff are developing answers to questions such as what level of control could local governments have or need to have and over what kinds of decisions, how will a land banking program ensure that local priorities are respected and supported? And how can we do that while making sure that the oversight doesn't affect a land bank's ability to move quickly and pursue real estate opportunities in competitive markets? We're looking at whether the existing land banking statute should also be amended in order to clarify who can participate and how partner jurisdictions can join or exit the land banking program to ease barriers to participation and also ease anxieties about loss of local control. We've been asked to help to keep and build on systems that are working, as Brian mentioned, with the site acquisition program and the TOD program, and build in mechanisms that identify local priorities and clear up roles and responsibilities as land banking scales across the region so that the program can truly increase coordination and streamline efforts rather than adding to bureaucracy. Next slide. And then on financing, staff within Metro, especially those of us who are familiar with program budgets related to our acquisition programs, are prioritizing financing as a key consideration in the program design for the future land bank. Land banks in other parts of the country are able to access a wide variety of revenue sources in addition to government appropriations. This pie chart on the slide shows the results of a survey of 92 land banks across the country that was done by our consultants at Center for Community Progress. It shows the average share of funding that land banks receive from each different source, including everything from land sales, philanthropy, and tax-related collections. From our interviews with almost a dozen land banks, we know that the more diverse the range of potential revenue sources a land bank has available to it, the more stable a program can be. And Metro's TOD program has set a goal, when we did our strategic plan back in 2023, we had set a goal for diversifying its funding sources, and it was able to secure $5 million from the state of Oregon as a revolving fund for purchasing land along 82nd Avenue's transit corridor. And that was, in order to expand a regional land banking program, it would mean to build on that pilot. And we've also been partnering with our colleague over in the council office, Johannes Wilde, and his work with the Social Innovation Council to ensure that we're able to build a program that the philanthropic community in our region feels confident that they can support. As we'll mention in a moment, we're also considering whether legislative changes should be pursued to enable new revenue sources, such as potentially temporary property tax recapture for sites that are redeveloped that are not currently available to land banks in Oregon. These could prove to be an important source of funding for ongoing program operations. We don't assume that the program's pie chart of funding sources would necessarily look like this at the start, but we're working to ensure that we aren't foreclosing on possibilities of diverse revenue sources in the future. Some key questions that we've heard from partners really are, what funding model or tools can support both operations and long-term sustainability and provide for acquisitions? The operations piece has been critical and has really weighed in on them, perhaps being less excited about, we had initially floated the possibility of like a nonprofit organization that was a land bank that was independent entirely. And they, especially the partners that are coming from the nonprofit world, were saying that was just, it really presents a lot of challenges on the operations side in terms of securing ongoing funding. So we're trying to make sure that we're answering all of those questions up front. To figure out how revenue can flow in. And next slide, please. Finally, there's the question of impact. How do we create a program that's designed to leverage the resources available in a constrained funding environment to create the most significant impact possible? That includes looking at solutions where money for land may not be the only way to be of use. How could a land bank also serve as a relationship broker, a clearinghouse of information and technical assistance? How can we leverage other existing grant programs at Metro and in our partner jurisdictions like the 2040 program, grants program, the Brownfields program, the Housing Production Accelerator Fund, Nature and Neighborhoods, and the TOD program, along with other incentives like streamlined permitting, infrastructure grants, and working with our philanthropic and private capital partners to ensure that we're aligning our efforts to make the biggest impact for our communities. We're also working with our colleagues in the Housing Department to make sure that we're working on other elements of the Regional Housing Coordination Strategy implementation, such as furthering fair housing and creating structures that can take advantage of innovative financing and construction methods. We're looking at what additional acquisition powers also might be, helpful in terms of the state legislation such as the ability to accept time-limited deposits of land from nonprofits and other agencies. In which ways that, maybe not needing a huge acquisition fund, we could still have a land bank be really helpful in the short term for those development projects. And we're also examining what pre-development work the land bank should perform during that holding period so that we're preparing the land for redevelopment and, as quickly as possible. Next slide. So as we've been exploring these topics with partners, it's become clear to us that changes are likely needed to Oregon's current land banking statute. We've been working with our colleagues in the Office of Metro Attorney and GAPD to develop a legislative concept that will hopefully bring Oregon's land bank law in line with national best practices. And so just some high-level elements of that would be potentially, we're definitely getting feedback right now, and we would hope to hear from you about what your thoughts are on these ideas. Potentially the ability to acquire through direct transfers, either from organizations or other government entities, allow the creation of that depository land banking program. We can get into more detail that other regions have, including some additional powers for like ability to clear title quickly, or lien resolution authority, potentially clarify land banking responsibility and limit liability from potential contamination of acquired properties. There are some limited protections now, but I think that those could be strengthened and that would be helpful. And then establish a range of options for potential revenue to support operations of a land banking program. Next slide. And so finally, with our next steps, as we mentioned earlier, we're about halfway through this phase of our engagement. Our third working group meeting is next Wednesday on July 29th. We'll continue to have one-on-one meetings with interested partners through the month of August, and then we'll have 2 more meetings in September and October where we're expecting to take like kind of a more fully fleshed out proposal to the group to get their feedback. And then we'll come back to council on October 13th. Next slide. And so now we would be happy to take any questions from council on our work, but we're also hoping to hear from you about whether you think we're on the right path, and if you have other key considerations that we should be focusing on. And finally, we would, as staff is working with other technical staff across the region to bring the proposal and flesh it out, how would council like to be engaged as we develop that framework? Thank you.
Delightful. All right, council, welcome any discussion on this. Councilor Lewis?
Sure, I'm very, very excited and supportive of us taking this action, both continuing to consolidate ideas from the group that you're working with, but also advancing this as a legislative priority for Metro. I guess as we're advancing the legislative priority, I would like for us to be open to the legislative priority also advancing any fixes needed for an industrial land bank. I have the history of having been part of that very near attempt in 2019, 2020-ish in Clackamas County, and I do still see value there. So if we're going to go forward with a fix or additional tools, why not both? Particularly because I think sometime in the future, it might be upon Metro to do some land banking on the industrial side, even though that's not where our mind is right now. So I think that's kind of one caveat. The other is in terms of title clearing and the lien process. Those processes, I think right now, would go through counties. How are the counties feeling about Metro taking on that responsibility? Or in our model, would we still be working with the counties to do that work on our behalf?
We've only met with one county so far, assessor, and that's Multnomah County. And I think they were very open to hearing what we were talking about. I don't think there was any heartburn over anything. I would say that, the discussion around foreclosures is a lot more difficult for them, and we're not going to touch that. I don't think it's not worth it relative to the number of foreclosures they deal with a year. But they were very open to this idea. I think the devil's in the details. I think that's going to get an answer we're going to get from everyone, and that's fair. But those details come starting in phase 3, really, and sitting down and being part of that group, getting to those details is the key.
Okay.
Yeah. And I do want to mention the land bank legislation that exists now is neutral about use, and I don't think we're interested in changing that either. This is, if you change the enabling legislation, it changes it statewide for everyone, and so people may not have the same needs, and so we don't want to be too prescriptive. So I want to assure you of that.
Yeah, and I think that the fixes that you're talking about might be particularly motivated by smaller parcels or more single-family residential or 5-acre multifamily type. And I just want us to be open to adjusting any limits or kind of stress testing for much larger parcels. That would be the industrial side.
Absolutely.
Because it's going to be far more difficult if there's a clouded transaction in the past that then got later merged with another parcel or whatever the proper word for that is. That's going to happen in an industrial setting. That's not going to happen in residential.
Thank you. Councilor Wong.
Thank you, President Gonzalez. Great work. Really excited about this conversation and the potential of a future land bank. In my conversations with various partners, the two things that have come up really are about speed of acquisition and governance, like who gets to make the decisions. I understand there's like enabling legislation that we have to go through first, which I'm supportive of, but how are you thinking through kind of those topics in the work groups?
Well, they have, I mean, those have come up as their main priorities. And so what we're currently thinking of, what we're hearing is we like the way that we've figured out how to work these issues through. So how can we build on what currently exists? And so like the site acquisition program worked very collaboratively with the local jurisdictions in terms of, you know, in some cases, they walked the sites that we were considering with us. We worked hand in hand to have any community engagement, you know, planned out, and they helped us, you know, set up the process for selecting a developer. So we really, you know, at least have those frameworks for how to partner with local jurisdictions. And I think that we would look, especially at the beginning, to, you know, essentially just build that out into an IGA where we solidify those, and also just for each jurisdiction that wants to participate, have them, you know, elevate their priorities. Where are they interested in having a land bank look? What are they hoping to get out of it? Really, each one of those conversations with each local jurisdiction is going to like be different. And so I think that ideally the land bank is a tool that is effective to reach that jurisdiction's goals, while keeping in mind the regional strategy in mind, as, you know, our already identified, you know, outcomes that we want. So we really have been thinking about building on what already exists and then working through getting everything established through, you know, IGAs. And then if there is legislation that does enable other, you know, powers or structures, then working that in. But we don't want to lose the time in the amount of time that it might take us to go to the legislation. And then if, like, for whatever reason it doesn't work out, we will have lost all that time without having begun working on that coordination effort. We really want to get that going as soon as we can. Because we feel like market is really...
My question actually was not necessarily speed in this process, which I understand we have a process with specific timelines of the legislature and things like that, but it's in the speed of being, like, Brian, when you had an example of that, you know, the old Kmart or the, you know, movie theater on Division, those were on auction, and it was like, the land bank entity needs to be able to decide to move quickly, which I think speaks to the governance, but also, so I think that for me, like what I'm looking for in the future is like, if you want to make the Kmart a reality, like that requires us to move faster, and we can't have everyone at the table before we go. It's like, we got to decide that this is the property we're going after and go after it. So I'm hoping that that's coming out in the discussions.
I think it is, and the governance is really two separate things here. There's board composition and what does the board's job and approach to approvals, and that process is very different than whether a jurisdiction wants to participate, and the governance that goes on between the two parties that are putting the land bank together. They are interlocked, of course, but I think if you have a jurisdiction that has, yes, we want to do these types of things, then you automatically remove the governance issue there because the agreements are already sort of in place to work across collaboratively to acquire property. Now, how that plays with the board and the board setup or whatever that looks like, I think that's to be determined still, and we're probably getting ready to get into those level of conversations pretty soon. But it's a well-made point, and I think it's important to know these are two separate sort of governance questions.
Great. And as you move into those discussions, I think from where I sit, that like speed and being able to execute a deal is top of mind, because I think that's what separates this potential land bank from kind of what we got now. So I just hope you lift that up as you move along the process. But great work.
Wonderful, thank you. Councilor Rosenthal, then we'll go to Councilor Simpson.
Thank you, Chair Gonzalez. A very good presentation, very interesting. It's a complicated process. You've been doing a lot of work. It's a little more complicated than perhaps I thought, at any rate. I was going to ask a question about the local, so I'm just going to ask some clarifying questions. I gather what you're saying is that in terms of the local jurisdictions, that intergovernmental agreements are probably the best way to work with them, and that does not have to be something that's in the enabling legislation. Second question, you're not.
That is correct. That is correct. Yeah.
The second question is, Councilor Lewis asked this about industrial land banking. I think you were saying that that's not something that we've looked at initially, but that is something that would be a separate process, or are you saying that that could be included in this process? And so,
in that regard, I would say what we're trying to set up is a piece of enabling legislation potentially that is neutral to the end use, which allows the parties that are working together to decide what is it they're working towards. And so if it is industrial land, then their agreements are focused on that, and they set up their composition based on what they're trying to achieve. And so we don't want the enabling legislation to make that harder, and we don't want to go through a second process for it. So it would be making it so you could set up whatever kind of land bank you kind of wanted to set up.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's possible to set up two separate structures to facilitate one in different cases, but I understand your point. It also suggested that it seems as though you were more or less saying that a metro-mediated process is probably an easier way to go than and maybe more effective than a non-governmental operation because of some, I believe you said there's some problems with transfers of property if you have an NGO. And so my question there would be, does that need enabling legislation? And the follow-up question is, are we going to be proposing that for this coming session? Does that need enabling legislation to give Metro authority to either set up a land bank group or to be an oversight of this group? Is that something that is being envisioned? I know you haven't done all the conversations necessary yet. I'm not sure. I got to think about that for a second.
Well, I think what we were saying is that the enabling legislation currently allows for any two, government, local or county governments to essentially set up a land bank that covers their geography. So we would still be hoping that, the future legislation would, require a partnership at least of at least two, but would allow for, different jurisdictions to enter and exit as needed. And we would potentially, but we don't want to wait until we have that legislation. We have currently right now, we have partners that have stated their interest in doing this. So there would already be the ability to establish a land bank under the current enabling statute. It would have to, it would be limited in its purpose and its, powers based on what is currently available, but it would still be able to function as an entity that we could use for that purpose. So Metro could start a program, and I'm just saying like this is possible, where we were, doing a land banking program. We set up all of the coordination that we're talking about through IGAs, and there was this part of the agreement was setting up an independent entity that was the land bank that was able to operate. And in those agreements, you could stipulate that it was, It could be Metro staff that potentially operates that land bank, and it could be that Metro is helping to fund it, and perhaps other partners are helping to fund that as well in terms of acquisition funds. All of that is possible today. We are merely looking at expanding that legislation to ensure that the protections that we need are, potentially greater, and that we have more powers in order to work more nimbly and effectively.
So we need the legislation to deal with the title clearing, to deal with the brownfields limitations, and to deal with it, providing additional or allow additional funding options.
Yeah,
And
that's
that's
exactly
what the
right.
legislation, not on the creating the basic structure, but on expanding the capacity.
That's correct. That's correct. We're just talking about amending the enabling legislation that already exists.
Okay.
But expanding it into doing way more than it currently does, because what it does now is not enticing anyone to go forth and create a land bank.
Apparently not, yeah.
Yeah, because even into this scenario, if you create a land bank under the current legislation, you don't get a lot of extra to that. You're just taking what Metro already does in the site acquisition program essentially and continuing it, but without any of the other special powers, funding, et cetera, that you're looking for.
Did the recent site that we acquired and are developing on 90th Avenue was done under the current legislation, correct?
It was just purchased by Metro through the Transit-Oriented Development Program.
Oh, so it didn't involve the current legislation
No.
for land banking?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Simpson, and then back to Counselor Huang.
Thank you, Chair Gonzalez. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Andrea, for your presentation. Much needed. I think we've done this in a number of ways from land banking. I think if you all can remember the Orphan Highway bill that we also supported, Duncan and I, when that came through, there's energy and momentum to get these things transitioned and moved over. So I'm fully supportive of this. But I'm also curious or interested in understanding which governance and financing models provide the flexibility needed to act quickly and ensuring that we are good stewards of these public resources. So I'm there too. But another question I have, because I have smaller jurisdictions, is how do we provide that technical capacity to them if they see the interest? Because on the fringes of our region are exactly what councilors Lewis and Rosenthal were getting at, our industrial lands. And I want to be able to move quickly. I know we're focused on housing now, but I want to move quickly when it's time to start bringing in trade sector, public sector partners to bring in and develop those lands via our Job Ready Lands program. Tell me more about how we can support our smaller jurisdictions.
Well, I think if previously we mentioned the site acquisition program, Metro was working with specific jurisdictions that were getting dollars, and those that wanted to work with Metro for acquisition of sites in their jurisdiction, it's a very similar concept, and we want to make it as easy as possible to come in and out of that process. So if you are, we can use Wood Village as an example, or Fairview, right?
Do Troutdale.
Okay, we'll do Troutdale. Let's do Troutdale.
Yeah, do Troutdale.
Let's say Troutdale.
Yeah.
Shockingly is not interested at the beginning to work with us on this. But 5 years from now, they have a site and they can't handle it on their own. And they're like, this is expensive, but we really need to get a hold of it. This land banking is a great idea. And it may have nothing to do with housing. And then there's a way for them to quickly and easily come into working with the land bank through an IGA with us that, yes, their council will have to approve it. But if they're motivated, they're going to be probably like, yes, let's do this. And we're going to find an easy way in to work on this site only.
Yep.
And then if Troutdale says, okay, thanks, we're done with that site, we want to move out, it's an easy process to say we're out of this partnership for now. It's not a all in or all out. It's fluid and allows them to decide when they're ready to come in and work with us or with the land bank, they come in and work with the land bank.
When the time is right and we need to go out to Troutdale, let's go together.
Okay, yeah, we can do that.
And we'll go talk to them.
Absolutely. And I think the idea also is that, like, if you have enough of your, and you talked a little bit about the funding piece, if you have your wide variety of funding already set up and you have philanthropic partners who right now seem very interested in this idea at the table, ready to make investment, then you've already identified a lot of your sources of funding that can be put into play pretty quickly once those agreements are in place.
Right.
So I think that's the value of having a lot of those conversations that Johannes in particular is having right now, is that potentially putting us in a really great spot to not have to be reliant fully on like going to the state with our handout to get money for this. So
yeah, and just briefly, You did touch a little bit about NGOs or 501c3s possibly housing this. Have you looked at any other 501 models? Because 501c3 is just one model, but have you looked at other models across the board?
We did talk to somebody briefly about 501c6s, and he encourages us to really pursue that. We haven't gotten very deeply into that, but we will be exploring different models, primarily because we want to be able to figure out how to, how do we avail ourselves of any potential resources, but also, if there are ways that other folks need to be able to make donations, or, we just really want to make sure that we're doing it intelligently and not.
There are places around the country where a municipal-led land bank is in partnership with a 501 organization of some sort for that funding sort of piece, and they work in tandem. So we've seen the full range of possibility.
Excellent. Looking forward to seeing your next round of work. Thank you.
Thanks. Councilor Wong, I see your hand up again, and then we'll go to Councilor Palacios.
Yeah, one more technical question. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the study was funded from our housing production strategy, funded through the construction excise tax. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
What in the future, what elements of construction excise tax could be used to support a land bank? I don't think we can use it for acquisition, but can it be used for other purposes,
I'm not sure we can answer that, but great question. I'd have to look at the boss to answer that question.
Councilor Wong, I think as we're developing the Housing Accelerator Fund, there are a number of elements of that could potentially be applied to parcels of land that would be purchased through a land bank, should there be a land bank. So things like speeding up permit review, site plans, all of that pre-development planning work, that can be funded by the construction excise tax, just not the acquisition.
What about the
or construction?
Operation and administration of a land bank?
That I don't know that we have an answer to. I think we need to work with OMA. And I will just remind us that the construction excise tax is not an unlimited funding source. We're really excited to do the work that you all have directed us to do right now, but it can only take us so far. I'm not sure about the operations, funding the operations of, and I'll turn it over to you, Carrie.
Thank you, President Gonzalez and Councilor Fong. I think that this is something OMA can come back to, are the parameters of what the purposes were initially set up for our construction excise tax and its current, construct. I think it's important for council to understand. I can't advise on those parameters right here, but we're happy to come back in the next work session or otherwise and provide council with a deeper understanding of those parameters.
Thank you. Yeah, just to be clear, my question is, what are the eligible uses of the excise tax, and can it be used to fund an operation or admin in service of property acquisition?
We'd be happy to come back and answer that.
Thank you. Councilor Palacios?
Yeah, thank you so much. I've got a question going back a little bit to our conversation of industrial land banking, acquisition, and everything there. If we were to follow that path, I'm interested in whether or not this is something we're already able to do or something that we could consider relating to parcel mergers. So if an industrial land bank runs up against a piece of land that, say, is already zoned for industrial use, would we be able to parcel those two lands together if we land banked the other land?
Just like a assembly and then doing a lot line adjustment or
lot line adjustment. So encompassing both parcels. The thought process there is some of our folks who are interested in bringing in more industry to their regions, just growing the type of land that's already within the UGB for that is where my mind's at.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty common usage for industrial land bank type work is site aggregation. So getting multiple sites and putting them together. Pretty common. I don't see any reason why, if that was what was created by two entities that wanted to work together, they couldn't do that. Sure.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you.
Wonderful. Great. I'm not seeing any more hands, but this is such important work. I think that we need to create the capacity for local governments to address the most pressing issues our region face, both in terms of jobs and housing. And I really look forward to supporting our legislative agenda as much as possible. And also very excited to see the progress of the work group that we've convened of experts, and just for Metro to continue to play a leadership role in bringing solutions. I often spend a lot of time in spaces where people are really good at diagnosing the problem, really great at complaining, and sometimes even better at creating wonderful and beautiful visions. But what I think our city in this region and our collection of cities need is action. And this is really, really excellent work for us to keep building on. And I think in a few years, when this program is robust and it's operating, people are going to be like, oh, wow, this is amazing. I'm so happy we have it. And I can't wait for that moment, for it to be firing on all cylinders. I don't have any questions for you, but just know that I think from the questions that you've heard on the council, you have a really, really strong base of support for you to continue to push with intention, to push innovation, take some risks, and we're comfortable with that level of policy. So thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Godspeed.
All right. So that is the last item that we have on our agenda. I will call on our Chief Operating Officer, Marisa Madrigal, for any updates.
Thank you so much. We do have two updates today, one from MPAC and one from CORE as well. So Malou, would you come up and give us the MPAC update?
I am happy to. Thank you, COO Madrigal. President Gonzalez, members of the Metro Council. Again, I'm Malou Wilkinson. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Deputy Director of Planning, Development, and Research. And I'll give you a short overview of MPAC, and then I'd love to hear from our Metro councilors who were there last night if there's anything that you'd like to add. MPAC met virtually last night, and MPAC last night was chaired by First Vice Chair Mayor Rosener from Sherwood. And we were happy to have Councilor Palacios come and say hello and goodbye. So we will miss you, Councilor Palacios, as a member of MPAC. And I think you were appreciated by everyone for coming and sharing your words last night. We had a number of committee member updates, and a lot of what we heard from the committee members was appreciation for the Metro Parks grants that were given out to communities. So that was really great to hear from across the region. And we had an update from Jess Zadeb on the future vision. It was more focused on the engagement that's been going on. We didn't share the draft values because we hadn't shared them with you all yet, and they'll go back to MPAC later. The conversation after the short update on the future vision, I'll just remind you all that we have an update on future vision at every MPAC meeting because MPAC, one of their most important roles is to support you all in the component of how we think about growth in our region. We also heard some ideas about other places that we might visit as we're tabling and visiting places around the region for the engagement for the future vision. We also had an overview of the regional transportation work plan and the upcoming engagement. And I'll just remind you all that the regional transportation plan, while it mostly is at JPACT, it is also a land use action. And so MPAC is required to recommend to you all final action on the regional transportation plan. So it's really important to keep MPAC engaged all the way through the process. We heard some of the conversation after that presentation on the regional transportation plan was focused on concerns about jurisdictions potentially needing more time during the call for project timeline, which is early in 2027. And asking us to make sure that we're not duplicating work. And I think there's a desire for MPAC to be engaged. Transportation is a key investment that helps shape our communities and MPAC, I think, is happy to have the opportunity to talk about transportation as well. The next item on the agenda was we heard about land banking just now here. Another action that was in the Regional Housing Coordination Strategy was a coordinated legislative agenda for housing, like we have for transportation. And so Kyung came last night to MPAC and walked through had the first conversation about a coordinated housing legislative agenda. The priority areas that have been identified so far, and Kyung is working with all of the counties and a number of the cities to develop this. There are a few priority areas, funding, not surprisingly, being one of them, some support for code updates, investment in kind of the wraparound services for behavioral health, understanding that that is a key component of homelessness, some funding flexibility, and a housing infrastructure financing program. The conversation at MPAC was, I think, really focused on, again, making sure that we as a region are working together to be sure that there aren't more mandates for code changes and policy changes at the local level that there's enough time for our local partners to implement those changes. I think there's a real sense at the local level that there have been a lot of state mandates without the time or resources for the cities and counties. That was a lot of the conversation. Kyung is going to come back, a kind of collaborative regional legislative agenda for housing. The last item on the agenda was our amazing Ally giving a presentation on the Community Connector Transit Study. And the conversation there was really focused on making sure that there was enough time for MPAC to have to ask questions about the study. We'll work with them, hopefully keeping Ally on her timeline. Right now, it's scheduled to go back to MPAC in September for their recommendation to the Metro Council. The Community Connector Transit Study is a foundational element in the 2028 Regional Transportation Plan. So we're hoping to work with MTAC and the MPAC members who do not have MTAC staff to help stay on the timeline that Ally has, if we can do it. If not, we'll adjust. And that, in a nutshell, the next meeting of MPAC is in September. And then their October meeting is actually taken by the joint MPAC-JPAC Future Vision Workshop. So MPAC does not have a lot of meetings. We're kind of anxious to work with our MPAC members to try to keep them on schedule for the recommendations that are coming to them, the actions that we're asking them to take in September. I would ask Councilor Rosenthal and Councilor Nolan if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, I'll just add a support. First of all, yeah, there is always the concern among the cities and MTAC about unfunded mandates. The legislature makes changes quicker than they can respond, as well as without resources, and that's something that they were concerned about. And they're also concerned about being a little bit bottled up in September because of so many things that are important, the RTP and the Community Connector study coming before them at the same time. And anyway, you're correct in saying that they have some concerns about that, and October does not give them an option.
Thanks. Anything else, Council? Okay, comments or questions for Malou? Councilor Simpson? No? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Malou. Marisa, anything else from COO's office?
Not for me. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm so
yes.
sorry, Cassie.
Okay, one last person. I made agua frescas. All right.
Good afternoon, buenas tardes. My name is Cassie Salinas. I serve as the Deputy Director for the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Department. I use she, her pronouns. Today, I'm here to provide you a brief update on what was discussed at CORE's meeting, which happened last Thursday, July 16th. And as you recall, I'm sure our director Sabrina Owens-Wilson has shared with you prior that the Committee on Racial Equity, which we use the acronym CORE, is to advise council and staff on Metro's strategies to advance racial equity through programs and policies. And I want to give you just a few highlights from last week's meeting and then invite Councilor Wong just to share a few words if there's anything I may have missed or anything you want to add. CORE members received an update from the Planning, Development, and Research Department, specifically related to the climate work. Jai provided a report out, what was planned, which was also planned to coincide with the Pacific Northwest Climate Week, which was last week. CORE members really appreciated hearing about the work in general, and they were actually curious just about the collaboration that we had with other jurisdictions, and in particular, how climate work and justice work intersects with Metro's broad portfolio, with a focus on parks and nature and housing. So we had some good discussion around just canopy coverage and just some really questions of curiosity that we heard from our CORE members. Also, I'm really excited. CORE unanimously elected current co-chair Tamisha Turner to continue serving in her leadership role. We are so excited and thrilled to have her and have her continued leadership at the helm of CORE. We also have another vacant position for the CORE co-chair, which we have a co-chair model. And we've invited CORE members, so we're really kind of trying to get people to try things on. We're testing out this model called a guest co-chair opportunity, where people who maybe have an interest in the upcoming topic, that they can try on what it is to be a co-chair before they actually throw their hat in the ring to be a member or be a co-chair. But our hope is that by the end of this year, and hopefully sooner, we will have somebody to fill the position, and we really do have a unique, what I think is a staggered leadership model to ensure we have consistency throughout the leadership with our co-chairs. On the topic of leadership, CORE members appreciated hearing the summaries of their meetings that are being shared out here. So today is an example of something newer that we've been trying out to share just updates to council for you all to stay connected on the things that are happening on CORE. Of course, we always invite you to participate and join us, but it really is a good opportunity to have the intersection and opportunities. And we also appreciate having Councilor Wong share updates that go on through our agency. So appreciate to all the staff, the support, and for these updates that kind of keep us all connected. So thank you for your time, Councilor Wong. And finally, the committee really spent kind of a bulk of the conversation discussing just really kind of a way to better understand our practices and approaches to community engagement, and really kind of understanding what are our practices and processes. They really wanted to learn more. What are the formal and informal ways that if things maybe are needing to be better aligned, or if there are concerns or questions, or maybe even grievances, how can community members from very diverse backgrounds elevate their concerns and voice their concern ways? But really specifically related to projects that require specific cultural and historical contexts. So we're going to be working in partnership with our community engagement staff to kind of bring that conversation and dig in a little bit more so they have a clear understanding of, again, what are those formal and informal structures, and perhaps just better define those for them and their understanding. We are, just like you all, taking a recess in August, so hopefully our CORE members can take some time to relax and enjoy this beautiful Oregon summer, and we will be on recess through August. Our next meeting is scheduled for September 17th, 2026, and I invite Councilor Wong to add any additional comments or reflections on this last meeting.
Yeah, well, we also encourage folks to come testify for Targeting Universalism, which thank you all for adopting today. And then in my council updates, I also wanted to welcome Councilor Palacios and President Gonzalez. I think CORE is very excited for you all to step into leadership. And then we had some discussion around, traditionally CORE has had 2 council representatives. So President Gonzalez, before you make that appointment, hopefully you could have some conversation with the co-chairs about what, kind of council liaisons they'd like to see.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll certainly do that.
Yeah. And last but not least, after today's council meeting, we invite you all to join the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion team and all those members who participated in this targeted universalism project for Agua Frescas in the Metro Plaza. We'll have music, sweet treats, and conversations. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I will be there. Thank you. Thank you, Cassie. Mandisa, back to you. Anything else on?
Truly this time, no.
All right, I'm looking at the wings here, just in case. Council communications, any updates, peers? Councilor Rosenthal.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I just want to give a shout out to both the Future Vision staff as well as the people associated with the Parks Levy, the Parks and Nature staff for their both enthusiasm and engagement at a couple of events, tabling events. They're the Viva Tualatin and the Robin Hood Festival in Sherwood, particularly in Sherwood where the booth was quite hot. And so it takes a lot of energy to set it up, and they were both enthusiastic and very much engaged with both the young people as well as parents, and appreciate their efforts. And I'll mention Craig and Jeff and Dana and Michelle particularly. There were other people involved, but those are the ones that I had the most interaction with.
Thank you. Councilor Simpson.
Thank you so much, President Gonzalez. I just want to lift up, this week was a pretty difficult week in terms of weather. We had some red flag and black flag weather, really hot weather, smoky skies, and last night we got a little thunderstorm. So I want to really lift up all of the Metro staff that work outdoors at our transfer stations, at our parks, and our zoo staff who look after our little furry friends at the zoo, keeping them cool. You know, when I was a young airman in the Air Force, you don't get a choice whether you work outside in the heat or not. And so when you're working in those kinds of extreme conditions, particularly at a job that is demanding, we oftentimes don't say anything, but we need to tip our hat to them and make sure that they know that we appreciate them for showing up to the job, still in black flag and red flag weather, being able to do that work and go home safely. And then it was a very, very difficult weekend. District 1, we had 2 water deaths, one at Blue Lake and Chinook Landing. I want to thank Councilor Gonzalez for the moment of silence at the beginning of council. And I want to extend my heartfelt just condolences to the families, friends, and community members of the families that were lost at those parks. That you don't ever want to hear that. And COO Madrigal, if we can next year for summer season, I would love for us to have water safety be the main topic of conversation.
Thank you for that, Councilor Simpson. I do want to share, it is, devastating to staff to have to respond to and know that these deaths occurred. And it is actually, previous deaths that have sparked our years-long effort now to distribute free life vests, safety, water safety devices. We partner with our health, Tri-County health bodies to try to get the word out. We advertise, we buy advertisements to talk about water safety. And it is something that it feels like it's never enough when you have a couple of days like we've had. But we also know that some people just don't know how dangerous water can be. And so our communications are often in multiple languages to hard to reach communities. When you steward the commons like we do, we are those third spaces where you can go and you can cool off even if you don't have any money and can't afford to do anything else. And so we take that very seriously, and we will double, we will triple, we will continue to try to expand our efforts in those areas and avoid further tragedy.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And I agree with you. You know, one of the community enhancement grants we handed out last year was to the Sandy Fire Department right there at the Sandy River in Troutdale to put some life vests there because they had a couple of near misses in that area. So I want us to continue to support that effort. And then my last update is this past Monday, I was able to join the walking tour with the 1803 Fund as we walked down Laura Albina to understand what we need to do in terms of development and support. And I hope that I'm looking at all my counselors that we can get behind that effort because community came out and spoke. I can't speak the words that they spoke, but they really laid it out there on the line that they really want to see that Lower Albina district developed for their needs so that they can be a thriving community. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Simpson. Councilor Lewis?
Yeah, I just wanted to report back Tuesday evening. I was at Milwaukee City Council, largely in conversation around the Future 50. I was there with staff as well as one of our Future Vision Commission commissioners. And I would recommend highly that if you've got a city and a Future Vision commissioner who lives in that city or is an elected official from that region, part of the region, that you go and it is a great engagement session and felt really good about it and think it could be replicated at other cities as we complete this process.
Love that. Thank you, Councilor, for your hard work. Councilor Huang? Oh, sorry, I thought you were raising your hand. All right, just some quick updates from me. Thank you, Councilor Simpson, for making that morning walking tour. I know there was a second part of a tour that Councilor Huang and I were at, in which we looked at the grain silos and other kind of high-level investment opportunities, and very powerful, very meaningful. I think with 1803 especially, they are recognizing a significant amount of investment that is coming to the Willamette River from Superfund all the way down to, the falls in Oregon City. And I know that Metro at the same time, I think we've put in, upwards of $50 million into the Willamette River in the last few years as well. So I think continuing to look at opportunities for community investment feels really, really meaningful. I hope that we can do that as well. Also, on Tuesday afternoon, I spent 2 hours with the Portland City Council and their Housing and Permitting Committee. Andy Shaw and I made a presentation on the housing bond, on SHS, the past, how we developed the policy, kind of where we are, reforms we're making, and also kind of what could be next for this level of investment and work. I will say that that 2 hour conversation was really, really good, very positive. A really rich dialogue of policy, of history, of opportunity, of acknowledgement of missed opportunities. And I think it's just an important part of Metro continuing to show up and provide information, research, capacity to other governments to think about some of these problems that cross jurisdictional boundaries. So I wanted to share that went really well. Also yesterday, Councilor Simpson and I, we had a meeting with the IBR leadership team. As you recall, I think it was maybe a week or two ago. We had a letter that the Metro Council sent to the IBR team that was led by Councilor Simpson. If you recall, it was on procurement and workforce. So we had a meeting really on a fact-finding mission to try and land much of our Metro Council priorities on that front, and that went fairly well as we were able to discover some information. I think there's some next steps. And lastly, I will share, Council, I'm having a 1 hour session today at Metro, and much of Metro's housing team is joining me. I'm having a meeting with the new executive leadership team of Home Forward. As we know, a few weeks ago, there were a few headlines ultimately left to then CEO stepping down, and just a part of continuing to strengthen transparency, accountability, and performance as one of the primary funders of this region's affordable housing work, and the deep desire that I know our council has to see those assets actually meet people, and to make sure that we're being great stewards of public resources. So just FYI, I wanted to let you know that it's something that we are leaning into and just continuing to raise the standards of everything that we would expect here in the greater Portland area. Okay, I think that covers it for me, but Councilor Rosenthal, thank you, signaling.
Well, I just want to tag on a little bit. You mentioned the Albina, and I'm glad that we have had the conversations and you had the walk to, and that the Albina project is moving forward. This is one of two early commitments we had to projects along the Willamette River. I had a brief discussion with the director of the OMSI project, and I just want to report that they seem optimistic that they have cleared, or they have a pretty good path forward so that they will be able to meet the deadlines that we have set. And so that would be two great projects along the Willamette River that we would support. So good news there.
Yeah, you're right. You're right, Counselor. I'm really happy that we've invested $5 million in that too. So, all right, y'all, I'm going to move to adjourn our meeting. Thank you all for a wonderful council meeting and the council work session. And I hope that we can all go spend some time with staff out in the plaza, some treats to celebrate this monumental occasion for targeted universalism. All right, meeting is adjourned.